Sup, my fellas. Don't forget to leave feedback, and enjoy the story. The curtain was fluttering because of the wind. The guy is sitting on the bed and looking down. Suddenly, his eye widened. He looks out the window and sees a palace. Opening his mouth, he realizes that he got into the game he was playing. We see a game console, because 3 years ago he took over the body of a character from the game. Near the golden guy there is a monster and a girl, because the plot narrated various dangerous events. The bull cut down the trees, and the game was about endless incidents at the academy. The zombies opened their mouths, because even the end of the world had come. We see that one of them started bleeding from the eye, and the story itself was large scale. Chuck raised his finger, because everything was fine and the main character will solve the problems. We see the guy's card, because he is a secondary character and was in a quest for beginners. He walked near the people and was surprised, because everything was realistic, and the history of the world itself repeats the plot of the game. He walked near the girl and decides to look at the main character, who was supposed to become famous. Jack clasps his hands, and the guy passing by him was looking for a spawn point. Opening his mouth, he thinks about the sprite. Putting his hand to his eye, he decides to live for himself. After that, his hand is taken. It was taken by Chuck, who also wanted to live for himself. The guy killed the monster, and there were differences between them. He holds a spear in his hand. After that, he looks at the screen, where there were statistics and did not know what to do with them, and there was also a problem that he never came to this game. Chuck put his hand on his shoulder, because he taught him and told him about the skills. Pointing at himself, he asked to trust. There was a smile on his face, because getting such an assistant was an incredible advantage. An angry dog was running behind him. Jack stands next to him, and was shocked. He created a pentagram and killed the enemy. Turning his head, he asks about the integrity of his friend. We see how he hits the enemy with a spear. He also makes a blow, because there is complete information about the game. He holds a staff in his hand because Jack has statistics and a system. Chuck hit the monster. They sit on the corpses of monsters because they wanted to prevent the end of the world together. Chuck smiles because they wanted to give him something. After that, he takes a bottle and drinks. There are guys standing near them, and there were only men. We see girls because there were various heroines and a dating simulator. The guys approached them, and Jack also preferred not to get involved with girls, inviting them to a party only when necessary, so at some point only men remained in their group. Opening his mouth, Chuck asks why their group only has sweaty and disgusting men. The blade lies on the floor because he should have realized everything at that moment, when the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor died on the way to the opening ceremony. She sits near the bed because she disappeared without a trace. We see different pictures with blood because mysterious disappearances and murders began. He turned his head because the most amazing thing was to see his reaction. Jack just stands and smiles. The guy is holding a bottle and he had a fawn in his mouth, and only now he understands that he should have been doubted. He opened his mouth in surprise. We see Maria's staff and do not know where it came from. His eyes widened because his friend left at night and just decided to follow. He is standing in the corridor, where there were many weapons behind glass. In one of them there was also a sword of another heroine. Nearby there is a steel mace. There was also a book of spells of Lark. After that, he went to another place and we see someone's legs tied with chains. Then we notice that it is a girl in a red liquid. Her face was calm and it was Maria. A man appeared behind, swearing. Putting his hand to his face, he asks what his friend forgot here. Freeing his hand, the main character explains that he initially said something different. They explain to him that the girl is a demon. We see Maria and ask, "Isn't the blood of an ancient vampire worth it?" Turning his head, he is told that he wants to find an effective use for the blood. His eye shines, because he also tasted this blood. We are transported to the past, where he drank a bottle. Jack grabs his face, because he felt sick. He kneels down, and is told that he worked hard to catch her. He spent a whole month in the forest with a trap. Grinning his teeth, he asks why? Jack raises his head and says that it is for the sake of effective progression through the plot. The protagonist was on the floor and he is told that constantly saving people only leads to losses. Besides, he does not kill bastards and continues to save those who cannot even be manipulated without increasing the level of friendship. Opening his mouth, he says that it is much more effective to use them this way and let her listen to him, because he is the best in this game. Sweat pours from his face and he asks how many he killed. His eyes shine and he asks for time to think. Opening his mouth, he says that about 100,000. Chuck bares his teeth, because his friend is not human. Taking him by the clothes, he starts calling him a monster. His eyes were red and he says that he only killed villains and didn't touch ordinary people. We see his chin and asked him again about overwork. Then he takes him by the shoulder and asks why the hell a magician needs a hidden fragment for nights? Smiling near Maria, they ask him why he should suffer from ineffective crap like creating a farm? His eyes shone even more, because they asked that he just decided to find a group to beat him up to amuse his sociopathy? After that, a blow passes near him. The guy hits himself near Maria. There was blood on the glass, as well as on the man himself. Opening his mouth, they tell him that he did it for him and shouldn't talk to him like that. Taking him by the clothes, Jack says that not knowing his place, he just meddles in other people's business and gets hurt. Opening his mouth, we see his teeth. His eyes widened, because he doesn't understand what his friend is talking about. He twitches on the floor and says that they were together for 199 chapters, and now he wants to change everything abruptly? Clenching his fist, Jack says that he got rid of everything that could block the way and all for the sake of their future. Raising his hand, he says that guys are only needed to stare at them and that he truly loves only him. The protagonist hits him on the chin and cries. Stopping a couple of meters from him, he realizes that he is very scared, because there was no girlfriend before. He starts to run away from him. Suddenly, he is held by purple chains. After that, the chains lift him up. They squeeze his body with crosses. Opening his mouth, he asked not to do this. Jack came up to him and said that he wanted to lock him up forever. After that, he smiles. There were tears in his eyes and they tell him that in this fake world, he is the only real one. Opening his mouth, he calls him a sick fool. A purple pentagram appears near the guy, because soon everything will end and there will be only one fight. There was a smile on his face, because he wanted to be with him forever. We see water, because the final stage is launched. The main character is lying on the rocks, because Jack always killed alone and will defeat the boss. He opened his mouth and water was pouring from it. A notification appears, because the player is dead and the test is failed. He is still lying on the rocks and is silent. We see curtains that are fluttering because of the wind. The guy opens his eyes and tries to catch his breath. After that, Chuck gets up and sits on the bed. In the window, he sees a palace, because he went back 3 years ago, to the day when he ended up in the game. The sun was shining on his hand. Then he squeezes them and they tremble. Grinning his teeth, tears come out of him, because he needs to kill Jack. His eyes are red, because he needs to kill the player. Water lashed against the rocks, because during the task of pacifying water monsters, the dam burst, and the river carried away an entire village. We see monsters and also people, because thousands of residents died. Jack smiles, because he liked this tragedy. He opened his mouth, because he laughed. They stand on the mountain and watch, because in countless deaths he saw only an opportunity to monopolize experience. He had black eyes and he says that he will finish off 3 more, and there will be 100,000. The guy is running somewhere, because he can stop his friend. He is standing near the inscription, because all possible enhancements for players are concentrated in the Merkaba Academy. There is a smile on his face, because he entered there and became stronger. The main character runs through the forest, and even if he is not a monster, no one knows how quickly his power will grow, and the entrance ceremony will take place in 5 days. Mushrooms grow on the ground, the hats were yellow. When suddenly, they were abruptly torn off. Jack looks at them and the only way to kill him is to act right now. There was also a training quest and the carriage was heading to the city, but it broke down right in the middle of the forest teeming with monsters. We see the forest, the moon was shining brightly. The boys killed the rabbit, and were happy that it was all over. Jack holds his head and thanks them. The man holds the lantern and says that they are done. Laura stretched out her hand and was about to take a nap. Suddenly, they turn around because they heard a sound. A log was flying at them. Leon threw the girl away so that it wouldn't hit her. He also jumped back and they weren't hit. Laura opened her mouth and was already pulling out her sword. A second-rank monster appears near them. He puts his hands on the floor and screams. Jack bares his teeth and understands what has started. The monster hit Laura and she started bleeding. He stands in front of the guy and screams. Leon frowns and asks Jack to get into the carriage because it will buy him time. The man flies into it and is told to go. The girl stands near the door and is told that she cannot leave Leon. We see how he was grabbed by the neck. Jack's eyes widened in surprise. His eyes lit up because before he acts, he must make sure if this is the hero who will save the world. We see the shadow of the monster, it had yellow eyes. Holding the sword, he begins to smile because the enemy is huge. He opens his mouth, from which drool was flowing. Emma holds the sword in her hand. She jumps up and hits the enemy. Opening her mouth, she understands that the attack was blocked. She sits down next to her friend. We see Jack's face because he was asked to go back. The girl holds a sword. She was the second daughter of the family, the owner of the Odachi, one of the 6 royal swords. The guy takes the dagger in his hands, because he would also be scared. She looks back and her pupils become larger. After that, she is hit on the shoulder. Chuck looks at this and cannot believe it. He bares his teeth and his pupils become larger. Emma holds her shoulder and asks why he did this. Her eye began to close. He smiles and apologizes, because he was just nervous. The monster opens its mouth and makes sounds. The girl holds her wound and is silent. When suddenly, she is attacked and tries to fight back, because if she dies, the guy will get the Odachi. Jack just watches them fight and thinks that she was poisoned, but does not die quickly. Perhaps she is just an unusual character. The girl jumps away from the monster. Baring her teeth, she tries to calm herself. Closing her eyes, Emma decides to concentrate. Her eyes open and shine. We see her black silhouette. The monster was approaching and screaming. The guy had red eyes and he understands that at this rate he can handle it alone. Taking the dagger in his hands, he did not want to allow this. After that, a weapon flies at her. The girl removes it with her sword. Her eyes are still shining and she understands that last time was not an accident. There was already an enemy near her head. She takes her sword. After that, she hits him on the head. We see that she is trying to finish him off. After that, Emma is lying on the ground. They approached her, and she asks why he did it. Holding her sword in his hand, he is happy, because this is a success and got the odachi. Touching it, Jack says that it can be used with a certain skill, but he will think about it later. We see his head from behind. Turning it, he asks if experience is given for killing a character? Emma just lies on the ground and is silent while they stand in front of her. Tears appear in her eyes. A red smile appeared on his face. Suddenly, a bag was thrown at him. He crossed his arms and tried to cough. His pupil became larger. There was yellow paint on Jack's face. Turning around, he asks to show his face. Hares with horns are running towards him. We see yellow mushrooms, because they have reddish pollen. Raising his hand, he bares his teeth, because now he looks tasty for the inhabitants of the forest. Hares pounced on him. Chuck tries to pull the girl away, because she is still alive. He notices a monster near her. He takes a fawn from him with his dagger. His eyes widen sharply. Behind him was Jack, who asked who he was. His hand clenched, and he said that he killed 3 horned rats in a minute, and apparently it was great to wield such a sword. Opening his mouth, he remembers it. The main character clenches his hand and is remembered. Holding the sword in front of him, he asks how he ended up here? Smiling, Chuck says that he can lose his hand if he holds the sword. Looking at the sword, he is surprised. Suddenly, the guy squeezes his hand and wants to hit. He looks in surprise and we see liquid. Closing his eyes, he calls him a fool. Then he makes a cross blow. The main character leaned over, because there is no other choice but to try his best. Then he makes a blow with a dagger. Putting his hands in front of him, the guy understands that the man simply smelled the smell of death. He is still holding the sword. Chuck decides to finish him off with a dagger. He runs straight at him with it. Grinning his teeth, we see that he has beads of sweat. In his other hand, he had another dagger. He strikes him in the shoulder. Jack opens his mouth and screams in pain. Tears came to his eyes. He had another weapon and he wanted to strike with it already. He bares his teeth, seeing another dagger in front of him. Chuck hit the hand, from which blood poured. One looked at the hand, the other right at him. He pressed on him and hit the neck. His hands are shaking, and Jack is bleeding from his mouth. Then he takes the dagger away from him. Sitting on it, he exhales, because he finished off the monster in the bud. We see the guy's card, because he is dead and now the percentage of successful completion of the main plot is calculated. Then the card of the guy himself appears and he is completely analyzed and ultimately the experience of the previous player passes to him. We see his card again, because now he is the successor of the martial arts master. The main character looks at the screen and understands that apparently the statistics window will fall to him. Then he pays attention to something. There was a girl lying behind him. He lifted her up, because she did not see anything. Grinning his teeth, he says that he is probably still dizzy and does not feel the smell, and there is a ringing in his ears. There was a pool of blood nearby, and during training it is difficult to create poison without using the combination window. He begins to take out his belt. Because the wing was in her body and she is in danger, you need to stop the bleeding and give an antidote. The protagonist ties it with a belt, because it stops the bleeding and removes the poison. Looking down, he understands that if Emma bites her tongue, it will be really bad and he needs to give her something in her teeth. He sees Jack on the ground. He looks and just thinks. Chuck gives the girl his hand to bite. Taking off his shirt, he asks her to clench her teeth with all her might and endure. He takes a dagger in his hand, because he does not know why he returned to the past, but the player died at his hands. Chuck removes the dagger from her stomach. He sits on the ground near the forest. Emma closes her eyes and lies down. A fire was lit, and something was being cooked. He turned his head, because he was preparing an antidote. The girl lies on a pillow, and she called him a savior. Taking an object in his hands, he is asked to say a name. He puts a cloth on her, and does not decide to say the name. Sitting next to her, Chuck asks her to stop thinking and rest, and will wake her up as the antidote is ready. He moves the stick on the ground, because it's time to clarify the situation. He had 2 sides because while the player is cleaning up all the incidents and accidents in the academy, he becomes a hero and the savior of the world. We see a black ball, because the player must deal with countless villains and the final boss. They are sitting on the corpses of monsters, because the only reason Jack followed the story was the final boss, who must be defeated, otherwise the world will end. The guy is lying on the floor with a dagger in his shoulder. The main character had muscles and was the successor of a martial artist, We see his eyes, because this is some kind of bastard, they could at least properly transfer the player's responsibilities to him. We see the screens, because he did not have access. Sitting with his back to us, he says that he became an additional player, but cannot use any privileges, and initially he was inspired by the sight of the system, but in the end nothing changed. The fire is burning, and he says that with only knowledge of the future it is very difficult to become a worthy replacement for the player, and you need to use something other than the system. Running a finger along the ground, we learn that Chuck has been training hard for 3 years and is no longer an ordinary character. He drew a circle with a symbol. Something begins to happen around him. Smiling, he understands that he was desperately trying to survive. We see a tree, because in a past life, being inclined to magic, he studied only one direction ancient symbols with magical power. There was a pentagram near the man, because this is the source of superhuman strength and the cause of destruction. Biting his finger, Chuck realizes that he is engraving all 3 runes on his body. He begins to draw on his body. Having written the symbols, he does a debt. The silhouette of a man runs, because by voluntarily giving an oath, the caster receives additional power from this commandment, and you can promise not to eat chicken or something like that. We also see scales, because it is very easy to adhere to this, therefore the increase in statistics is minimal, so he must give a very demanding oath. Smoke comes from the inscription, and it will follow until the very end. We see a heart near the chains, because Chuck's statistics will increase from completing the quest, and otherwise a fine. He bites his hand again to make a second rune, namely, a limitation. He draws on his second hand. We see different spirits, because everyone here has spiritual perception, and there are also immaterial ghosts and elementals. We observe people who are approached by ghosts, because these creatures only come into contact with each other through mutual knowledge, and then they cannot harm those who are unconscious or do not have spiritual perception. We see a silhouette of a man, because now, since his spiritual perception is at 0, he is completely protected from all such creatures. He draws more symbols, namely the last one in oath. This commandment is directly related to a great risk, because it uses the weight of a promise as a source of power. He closes his eyes, and they did not use this in a past life. Jack smiles near the screens, and he used everything that was in the system. In the end he lost, so there was no point in worrying. Opening his mouth, he says that he will save the world, and this was a warrior's oath. We see a heart in chains and finished with the commandments. His eyes glow red, there were many chains near him. We see her blue eye. The girl is lying in bed and the sun is shining on her. Having gotten up a little, a nurse comes to her, asking about her health. Emma looks surprised and is told that she is in an emergency hospital. We see buildings and she is told that she cannot move. Shaking her head, she asks where her things are. We see a bag on a chair and it belonged to her savior. Picking up the belt, she sees blood on it. Looking the other way, she calls the nurse. Louise runs up confused and asks what she needs. Clenching her hands, she asks about the honey-filled candies. We see a large building, because 3 days after the end of the training quest, there was an entrance ceremony to the academy. Looking in his wallet, he tries to find his student ID. In his hand was a letter, and he did not remember putting it here. Opening the sheet, he reads how proud his mother was of him. Exhaling, he thought when they managed to slip him a letter, and in general he was a talentless child. They are sitting at the table, because when he first got the body, he behaved awkwardly and unusually, but they treated him like a family member. Raising their hands, Chuck began to love. Clenching his hands, he understands that this is the difference between him and Jack. There is a transport in the tunnel. People were standing near the trains and were surprised that there were so many of them. Maria raised her hand and greeted the new students. The protagonist approached her and greeted her. She gave him a potato, because she wanted to treat him. Then they got on the train and left. The girl raised her finger and showed the surroundings, and this area was called the Science Hall, and there the magic students were doing research. The girl closed her eyes. She was a first-class magician and a second-year student at the academy, who was walking forward along a smooth and wide road, blessing everyone. We see Maria, because in the future she will feel the depth of despair and become the final boss of the first arc. The guys began to get out of the train, and they were asked to take 1 sweet potato each. She waved her hand and wished everyone good luck. The guys entered the building, namely the Freedom Hall. The protagonist noticed that there was space expansion magic at the top. He stands near the guys who did not see anything. The guy just stands while the others were confused. He scratches his ear and thinks that it feels like they've gotten into a training camp. We see shadows of people, because the most effective weapon against demons is superhumans using aura and mana. There was another silhouette of a man, and he greeted everyone. Oliver was holding his neck and saying that he was a professor and responsible for the welcoming ceremony of the freshmen this year. Chuck smiles, because he hasn't seen him for a long time. He was wearing glasses and says that first they will look at their abilities. Everyone gets screens. We see Chuck's screen. Looking at it, he understands that everything is terrible. Oliver puts his hands in his pockets and says that this is their assessment, and let them stand at the number that corresponds to their rank. The main character stood at number 6. Smiling, he wished them luck in the battle. We see white silhouettes. The guys moved, and this year there were many talented freshmen. The girl adjusts her glasses, because there is no point in evaluating the first and second ranks. Let them just wait for the other participants to finish their tests. Emma was number 2. Kate was also number 2. The guy holding onto her shoulder was a mercenary. The red-haired boy was a mage who created golems. Laura was number 1, the only student with such a result. Her eyes were red. Eva was wearing glasses and was surprised that such a first-year student would be admitted. John put his hand to his chin and did not understand if there was any point in checking the 6th rank. The girl was holding a whip, and she says that the chairman wants all students to follow the path of learning. He snaps his fingers and decides to begin. A box appears near the main character. It was a case with weapons. Looking to the side, he is told that during this test, participants are sent into empty space and forced to fight monsters. The countdown began and the guy opens the case. He takes a sword in his hands. 3 monsters appear in front of him. They have yellow eyes and are of the 5th rank. He throws his hands behind his back and also said that it takes 100 days to master a spear, 1,000 days to master a blade, and 10,000 days to master a sword. He opened his mouth and was surprised. Chuck attacks, because it was not for nothing that he chose a spear. A wolf appears near the monster. He raises his hand and asks for forgiveness. Enemies run to him. They had a long tongue and they screamed. When suddenly, the protagonist killed them. Smiling, he says that he has killed many times. Pulling his weapon straight out of the monster, Chuck said that it took him 12 seconds to kill them. Swinging his spear to the side, the boy said that when he passed this test in his past life, he could not even kill the hounds and flew out. But now everything is different. Throwing the weapon over his shoulder, the protagonist was going to finish off all the monsters of the next rank, saying that everything was fine, and asked to release new ones. 5 minutes later, Chuck stood there in confusion, because no one had appeared. The boy looked straight ahead in surprise, wondering why no one had appeared and whether the system had failed. At this time, the magic stones showed the events happening to other students. The academy professor was watching all this, and he was very dissatisfied, wondering what they would do next if they couldn't even kill such creatures, and noted that at one time he had dealt with rank 5 monsters in 1 minute and 22 seconds. Then he said that since these guys were like that, there was no point in even looking at rank 6 students, when he suddenly noticed something amazing in the magic ball. Right there, the old man noticed rank 6 Chuck, who was just sitting on the floor and yawning from boredom, and asked what was going on and whether the monsters hadn't appeared. At the same time, the professor of the academy thought that it might be some kind of glitch, and right in front of the protagonist at that very moment the hounds appeared again, and he asked why they again, and not the next rank. Seeing the opponents, Chuck began his battle against them, while the old man walked away from his magic stone, calling him a pathetic idiot. Suddenly noticing something right in front of him, John wondered if the first participant who passed the test had really appeared, and was surprised that he had spent only 7 minutes and 20 seconds. Then the old man looked away, thinking that the 3rd rank would need 2 or 3 minutes, and asked what his charges were doing. At that very moment, the professor of the academy saw the bored boy again and asked what was wrong with him, and why he was in that pose again, realizing that something had broken down and the summoning of monsters was malfunctioning. Immediately after that, his colleague approached him, who looked straight at the magic ball, saying that it couldn't be that something was broken, because in 20 years, Madame Eva's magic had never failed, and he explained that, but this good-for-nothing, who should have already flown out, sits like this, and there is only one conclusion, that summoning monsters does not work. Looking straight at him after hearing this, Sam asked if he personally saw that no one was appearing, and the academy professor gave a negative answer, noting that there was no need for this, to which he replied that he did not see it. Then he said that this was definitely some kind of glitch, and was going to try again, when suddenly those monsters appeared again right in front of the protagonist, which made him very angry, and he said that this was some kind of hell, and asked why the same bastards appeared. Immediately after that, Chuck rushed forward, declaring that they were not training a dog. At that moment, his spears caught up with the dogs and destroyed them in 7.3 seconds. Seeing this, the professor of the academy was extremely dumbfounded. A moment later, they looked towards Professor Oliver, turning to him to take a look, and he asked what was going on. While the man with glasses looked straight ahead with displeasure, his colleague asked what was the shortest time his charges had taken to complete the test, to which he replied that a guy named Edward had completed it in 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and wondered what the question was about. John looked away in shock after hearing this, and said that there was no need at all, and that this guy must be the son of a hunter, since he handled the spear so well. Immediately after this, a mad boar, a rank 4 monster, appeared right in front of Chuck, and the professor of the academy was about to take a look at it now. Seeing the monster's corpse in the magic ball a moment later, the academy professor was stunned that it had been killed in 3.7 seconds. Then he decided to give the boy a more difficult task and summoned an owl bear, a rank 3 monster, right in front of the boy. The monster delivered its blow with a deft swing of its wing, which the protagonist dodged. With great force, he thrust his spear straight into the monster. Having received damage, the owl bear made a counterattack, which Chuck also dodged. Immediately after that, the boy drew a Ken-S rune with his finger. At that very moment, the huge bird was completely covered in flames. The academy professors, noticing this, were very surprised by the presence of runic magic. Oliver quickly looked to the side and asked about runes. At this time, the huge monster was covered in flames from all sides, and Chuck, watching this, assumed that it seemed to have no particular effect. While swinging his weapon, the boy noted that, however, that was not all. A moment later, he soared into the air, claiming that he had managed to block the view. Striking straight at the monster, the protagonist said that this was quite enough. Sam was watching all this from the observation point, who was very dumbfounded and thought that this guy was definitely unusual, and it was a pity that there were only 3 rank monsters in the test. Looking straight ahead with interest, the old man thought that for the first time in a long time, an interesting student had appeared, and he was already looking forward to his battle with the demonic spirit, while his colleague was just about to arrange it. A moment later, John announced that they would begin the test with a rank 5 demonic spirit, summoning it right in front of Chuck. At this time, the boy looked away menacingly, thinking that they had definitely summoned something else, but he did not see or hear anything. At that moment, a notification about the system appeared right in front of him, about the limitation that he does not perceive spirits, and the protagonist thought that this limitation does not allow him to recognize any such creatures. Realizing this, Chuck closed his eyes, reasoning that this means that they will not be able to contact him either, and wanted to see if everything is as it seems to him. The boy remained in place and counted to 60 in his head. Immediately after that, he smiled widely, realizing that this is true, and it definitely works, but it was still worth checking. Suddenly, the protagonist raised his spear above his head, declaring that he refuses to continue. At the same time, a notification window appeared right in front of him, notifying him of the test with demonic spirits, which was rejected, and with the rest, he was disqualified. In the notification window with the test with monsters, there were values that broke all previous records. Chuck stood right in front of John, smiling as he noted that he had tried hard, and John wondered if this student had really refused. The academy professor, looking straight ahead, was confused as to who this boy was. Immediately after this narration, the story was transferred to the students' results waiting room. Chuck looked at the guys in front of him, who were talking about what rank someone had received, and someone said that it was a 4, and someone else a 3, and was surprised that he had killed an owl bear and a banshee. Edward was standing right in the middle of the crowd, with a big smile on his face. Noticing him, the boy remembered that this guy had looked directly at Jack with displeasure and had started a fight with the player at the very beginning of the story. Immediately after that, the hero had killed him, because he was annoyed, with a dagger thrust straight into his neck. Awkwardly scratching the back of his head, the protagonist reasoned that although he was an arrogant bully, and at such an age it was normal, but Jack was a crazy bastard. At this time, the surrounding students looked straight at the shy Lewis with disdain, saying that he had calculated rank 5, and it was probably difficult to lose intentionally, so it meant that there were those who could not even defeat shorthounds and ghosts. Looking straight at the guy with glasses, the protagonist thought that in his past life he could not cope with his inferiority complex, and having slandered him and Jack, the latter suffered the same fate as Edward. Suddenly, an unknown person began to speak into the microphone, wishing everyone a good morning. The man stood right on the stage, saying that he was Chairman Kevin, and they entered this academy to become strong. He continued to say that some of them had already succeeded, and some still had a long way to go, while Laura and Emma listened attentively, looking straight ahead. The 3 boys along with the protagonist also listened attentively to the chairman's words, who said that he could not guarantee that they would get what they wanted by studying there, but they hoped that they would be able to find their way, and they wanted to help them take the right first step, and the second would be their responsibility alone. Smiling widely, Kevin declared that this was all, and wished everyone a good day. After listening to the chairman's speech, the students began to disperse. Edward declared that from now on he was a knight of the 3rd rank, and said his name, when he suddenly noticed Lewis sitting to the side. Immediately after that, the bully would walk right up to him and ask him what rank he was, to which he would be told that he was a 5. Standing right above the guy in glasses, the knight would call him pathetic, asking if he couldn't defeat a ghost or a shorthound. Suddenly, Chuck would walk right up to them, putting his hand on Edward's shoulder, greeting the boys while Edward would ask who the hell he was. Pointing directly at the bully's tattoo on his neck, the boy would remark that it was very different and must have been done by a very talented artist, and looked pretty neat up close, and also asked if it was his blood type and that it was so that he could quickly get a transfusion if he was injured, which was impressive preparation. With a wide smile on his face, pointing to his tattoo, the 3rd rank knight stated that he knows something, and frankly, this is his mother's work, because she originally specialized in line work, but at his request she made a tattoo in the old school style. Looking admiringly straight ahead after hearing this, the protagonist said that she was amazing, asked if he had any other tattoos, thinking that he already knew everything. Remembering how he met a woman with his past friend in his previous life, Chuck explained that when Edward disappeared last time, his mother came to the academy. Seeing her crying right in front of Jack, the boy thought that she said that all these tattoos were not made for show, and the mother was just worried about her son, who entered the academy. Realizing that this was the heart of a parent, the protagonist looked at the bully, who showed the tattoo on his arm, explaining that he also had one here, and explained that it was a hovering chariot, symbolizing the Merkaba Academy. Looking straight at the third-rank knight, Chuck said his name and asked what his name was, to which he answered. At that moment, the boy asked what his name was, and Lewis, who heard this, sharply looked away, saying his name. Emma was watching all this from the side. With a wide smile on her face, she said that this guy so naturally saved someone who was being bullied, and admired it. Saying that he seemed like a good person, the girl looked straight at the smiling protagonist. At this time, Chuck watched Lewis, thinking that this is how he made a good impression on him, and apparently, his ability was memorization. A moment later, the boy grinned maliciously, realizing that his free skill book had been found. The protagonist looked like a villain from the side, and Emma, who was watching him, thought that even his smile was cute, and wondered what kind of person he was. The story moves to the huge building of the Merkaba Academy. While Chuck was thinking that most of the amenities there were free, the food in the cafeteria was cheaper than in other places, and they would not be charged for living in the dorms. Coming to the training hall with a huge number of spectator seats, the boy noted that he most recommends this place to the students. Dexterously wielding his spear, the protagonist explained that the reason was simple, and the use of this hall made impossible training possible. Chuck repelled all attacks with his weapon, saying that, for example, battles with spirits that he cannot see. His training was being watched from the side by some students, one of whom told another that this first year was training with spiritual bodies. Maria also passed by and noticed the guys, one of whom stated that such training was usually held in the second semester, and he probably came there because of rumors. And another noted that he heard that countless second years could not catch even a wind-type spiritual body. At that moment, the boy received a blow directly to the head, and the guys who noticed this told him to watch, stating that this is what awaits first years during such training. With a clearly tired look, looking straight ahead, the protagonist asked if this was still too much for him, and Sam, standing right behind him, explained that he was still a newbie. Turning back, Chuck greeted the instructor, who asked why he needed such training, to which he replied to improve his spear skills. Then the old man asked if he was sure he could handle it, and the boy, who had thrown the weapon over his shoulder, answered positively. Looking ahead, the protagonist wondered why this old man had approached him, and whether there had been something wrong during the entrance test. Hearing his answer, Sam looked straight ahead menacingly. Smiling broadly, the instructor said that this was a great attitude, and gave him 10 food coupons. Walking away, the old man asked to find him if he could handle it, and then he would receive praise, and the man watched him with dumbfounded eyes. Sighing with relief, the boy thought that he had already managed to get scared, but in vain, because this man uses food to show his disposition, and this is probably a good sign. Right after that, the protagonist was about to start all over again, and the girl with blue hair continued to watch this silently. A moment later, Chuck began another battle against the spirits. At some point, he was overtaken by an attack. After receiving damage, the boy was knocked to the ground. He was lying on the floor, just looking up. Suddenly, a handkerchief fell right on his face. It belonged to Maria, who came up to him and held out a glass of water, asking the younger one if it was hard for him, and he answered positively. Manipulating the water from the glass with her finger, the student told him that he can rest, because he worked hard enough. Looking at the exhausted protagonist, the blue-haired girl explained that he just needed to get used to it, and one day everything would work out, so he should try again next time. Reaching his hand towards the glass of water, Chuck thought that he did not have any next time, and maybe it was then, 3 years ago. Remembering Jack giving him a helping hand, the boy reasoned that maybe it was with him, and they had the statistics window, potions and skill books from the combination window. Realizing that his ally was no longer there, because he killed him, so now he had to do everything himself, the protagonist sat right on the floor. Handing back the handkerchief and the empty glass, Chuck expressed his gratitude, noting that he could give up at any moment. Realizing for himself that he had to become the strongest, the boy firmly took the spear in his hands. Preparing for the battle against the spirit of the wind, the protagonist thought that first of all he needed to know the limits of his capabilities, and maybe this was too much, but he needed to check what abilities from the past he could use. Immediately after that, holding the spear straight in front of himself, Chuck used an ominous snake strike. Deftly putting the weapon aside, the boy attacked with a wind swing. After making several more moves, the protagonist used a blocking counterattack. Chuck flew into the air and was about to attack with reverse sky rotation. Sending his spear forward, the boy used mountain throw. After finishing using his skills, the protagonist sighed heavily, thinking that he had neither a strong body, nor powerful magic power, nor an aura, and knowing the future was useless in a fight with monsters and geniuses. Immediately after, Chuck tightly gripped the handle of his weapon, thinking that in order to stand up to them, he had to work harder than everyone else, and this was his only advantage. Realizing that those 3 years of life would not let him down, the boy swung his spear using the Serpent of Calamity. Then the protagonist sent his weapon flying with great force. His spear was directed at the wind spirit at high speed. Maria was watching all of this, thinking that he had simply thrown the spear and decided to give up. Suddenly, seeing something right in front of her, the blue-haired girl realized that this throw had a different purpose. Watching Chuck approach the wind spirit with the spear in his hands, she realized that he had allowed himself to be caught. A moment later, the boy was stabbing the elemental with his spear using the slithering snake skill. At that moment, the entire area was illuminated by a blue glow, while a second-year student was watching from the side. Maria stared straight ahead in shock, realizing that common words like strong or outstanding were not suitable to describe this guy, but she had already found the right phrase. Staring straight ahead, the blue-haired girl was in awe. She looked straight at Chuck in the air, thinking that he was simply amazing. A moment later, the student noticed the boy falling from a great height straight to the ground and asked if he was okay. Maria called out to the younger boy while he lay motionless on the floor, thinking that his body was imperfect. Looking at the broken spear lying nearby, the protagonist realized that he had overdone it. Immediately after this, the story moves to the next day at the huge building of the academy. Maria greeted the first years with a wide smile on her face, announcing that today she was introducing them to the premises of the academy. The girl with blue hair talked about the pride of their academy, while Chuck ate potatoes, thinking that first of all he needed to take care of his body in order to fight properly. At this time, the second-year student happily showed everything to her new students, and the boy watching this reasoned that it was necessary to increase your physical capabilities without any elixirs, and only one thing could help with this. Suddenly looking to the side, the protagonist thought about the commandments. He looked straight at Lewis, who was reading a book, and thought that he promised not to ignore the misfortunes of good people. Immediately after this, Chuck walked up to the guy with glasses and hugged him, greeting him, asking if he wanted to eat with him. Approaching him, the boy also mentioned that he wanted to talk a little about grimoires, which surprised Lewis. Visualizing a beautiful book in his head, the protagonist thought that a grimoire, in simple terms, is a book of skills, and by reading what is written in this powerful artifact, one can acquire skills or characteristics. Immediately after this, the narrative of the story is transferred to the library of the Merkaba Academy with a huge number of shelves with books, and Chuck reasoned that it is known for its impressive size, and also serves as a place for storing and passing on knowledge from generation to generation. Thinking that all this was bullshit, and the library was actually a repository of grimoires, the boy and Lewis examined the shelves with books. Looking at the guy with glasses standing behind him, the protagonist noted that if he wanted to hide the tree, he should hide it in the forest, and he declared that he understood everything and the main thing was that he kept his promise. Chuck grinned maliciously, asking him not to worry, because if he fulfilled the conditions, he would receive a grimoire with a characteristic, and thought that Lewis was a real hard worker, an intellectual and a model student. Looking through another book on the shelf, the boy reasoned that he memorizes spells and stores them in his book, and of course, the number does not matter, because he will not be able to use them all. The guy with glasses was dumbfounded that his ally was throwing books right on the floor, while he thought that a low-level max with a small amount of mana would not show good results even with a great theoretical part. Having declared that with the grimoire it would be a completely different story, the protagonist took another book, listing the letters of the alphabet in his head. Seeing another textbook that falls on the floor, Lewis asked him to stop messing around there. At the same moment, he looked dumbfoundedly straight at Chuck, who was standing in front of an open secret door, and could not believe how he found it. The boy immediately followed inside, telling his friend to follow him, and he asked him to wait for him. Walking along the corridor, the guy with glasses noted that it was quite creepy there, when suddenly the protagonist called out to him. The seriousness of his gaze, looking straight at Lewis, Chuck declared that it was time to fulfill the promise, and offered to try his best. Shaking his hand, the guy with glasses agreed to this, asking that he needed his help with the spirits. As Lewis was about to ask what he needed to do, Chuck the boy suddenly slapped him in the face. With an evil smile on his face, the protagonist declared that they would begin now. Chuck looked straight at the one lying on the floor and thought that he came there in the first place to help him, but he also needed to complete a special quest. Suddenly, the boy looked away, thinking that this was not all. Realizing that there was a small problem, the protagonist noticed Jackson's special demonic spirit right in front of him. The protagonist squatted, looking straight ahead, thinking that this quest was actually impossible. Looking ahead in confusion, Chuck wondered how to catch a special spirit, and an unusual one. At that moment, Jackson created purple magic spheres right above his head, sending them to attack. Watching as a huge number of magical attacks approached him, the boy noted that this was also the warlord who ruled the South 800 years ago, and most of the players would die from his attack at the very beginning of the quest. Deftly dodging all the attacks directed at him, the protagonist noted that this did not apply to him. The system window promised that due to the limitation, he did not perceive spirits, while Jackson continued to attack Chuck with his magic. Confusedly standing in place, while all the enemy's attacks passed by, the boy concluded that he did not see him either. A moment later, the protagonist turned to Jackson, saying that he apologized, but he could not see him, which greatly stunned the spirit. Holding Lewis directly in his arms, Chuck asked if he could possess this guy. Imagining microbes in his head, the boy reasoned that in this world there are so-called factors that transform ordinary people. Visualizing a monster-like person, the protagonist explained that they were more like demons, vampires, or werewolves. I imagine Jackson standing right in front of a bloody human corpse, Chuck telling me that he once woke up as a vampire and killed his servant. Immediately after that, the man screamed loudly, and the boy explained that his attempt to curb his new instincts had failed miserably. The protagonist visualized people leaving the castle, saying that in the end, he, afraid of harming his wife and daughter, evacuated his family and closed the doors, wanting to avoid a bloodbath. Imagining a beautiful book in his head, Chuck concluded that the Duke used magic to seal himself inside the grimoire, the same one stored in the library. At that moment, a special demonic spirit entered Lewis's body. A moment later, he rushed at high speed straight towards the boy, who, noticing this, said that he simply rushed at him, and probably his vampire instincts led him astray. With his menacing gaze fixed forward, the protagonist mused that he brought Lewis there for another reason. Deftly dodging the vampire's blows, Chuck reasoned that the thing is that a person possessed by this spirit can reveal his physical potential. Hitting his friend right on the head, the boy explained that the model student in heroic legends has the lowest strength rating. Stepping on Lewis with his foot, the protagonist mused that it was a pity for this guy, of course, but there was no better way to complete the quest with Jackson, and he could not kill him right now. Continuing to stand right on his friend, Chuck knew that this would end, and he would be able to get high-ranking items, such as Jackson's cloak and the vampire armor. While imagining Jack in his head, the boy thought that he used them, and that these items played a big role in the future events. After which the protagonist smirked, noting that they were different. Then Chuck asked if he was interested in what happened to his wife Louise and daughter Cicely, and the vampire who heard this suddenly froze. Sitting down right in front of him, the boy asked if he wanted to know what kind of life they lived after he sealed himself. Sitting right in front of Lewis, who was possessed by a demonic spirit, the protagonist thought that he told him several stories about how his wife died after leaving the castle, and what a great adventurer his daughter became. Looking straight ahead with a smile on his face, Chuck reasoned that there was a reason why he hated Jack's method in this world, because he was a man who had a family there, and asked what he thought, whether this story satisfied him. Looking straight at the crying vampire, the boy thought that he would like to end the life of this unfortunate soul with dignity. Wiping tears from his eyes, Jackson apologized for attacking him and thanked him for these stories, and the protagonist sitting right in front of him explained that everything was fine and he did not hit him. Then the special demonic spirit said that he wanted to ask something else, when suddenly the narration of the story was transferred by Blood Grimoire, imprisoned in magic balls, when Chuck thought that they had a long conversation before his final departure. Looking straight at the bag of dust, the boy saw a notification from the system that this is the epic ashes of the soul of Jackson's special demonic spirit. Looking at the two beautiful books, the protagonist saw a notification from the system that these are grimoires in which the soul of the special demonic spirit was imprisoned, and they contain abilities and spells that he can obtain after reading. A moment later, the red grimoire began to disappear as the system announced that he had acquired a new ability, and showed a description of the regeneration of a steadfast warrior. Looking away with displeasure, Chuck mused that this ability was that asshole Jack's, and really, he had no idea how strong it was, because the guy wasn't injured. At that moment, the kid noticed that Lewis had woken up, and told him not to try too hard, because he had been possessed by the spirit all this time. Suddenly, the student asked if that was why his jaw should hurt, and the protagonist, hearing this, pretended that it was not his fault, saying that he didn't know, and that was probably how it was supposed to be. Immediately after that, Chuck held out the blue grimoire to him, and told him to shut up and take it, which surprised Lewis greatly. The 5th rank mage held out his hands, asking if it was really possible, and the boy, looking at him, thought about the last reason why he chose him. Watching Lewis, who was reading a book with admiration, the protagonist explained that the reason was that he wanted to see how a hard-working person received a well-deserved reward. At that moment, a system notification window appeared right in front of him, notifying him of the debt that he pledged not to ignore the misfortune of good people, and fulfilling Jackson's debt. Looking straight ahead in surprise, Chuck wondered that he really earned 80 attribute points, and to get that much, he would have to level up 16 times, because for 1 point they usually give 5 points. The boy walked down the hallway, carrying Lewis with him, and reasoned that there was no notification of the promotion, which means that this entire reward is for one quest, and wondered if such an amount compensates for the fact that you can't distribute points yourself, and it's still strange that they gave so many. Immediately after that, The system notified that the duty not to ignore the misfortune of good people was observed, and the bonus of the capital distribution is 2 times more than 40 points, because Chuck did not ignore Jackson's misfortune. Then the narrative of the story moves to the training hall, where there were no people in the stands at all, when suddenly someone called out to the guys, asking if they wanted potatoes. The students did not refuse Maria's offer, who happily distributed food to everyone. A moment later, a girl with blue hair approached the boy, asking that he would again study with spiritual bodies today, to which he gave a positive answer. Hearing this, the second-year girl said with a smile on her face that she believed in the junior and would encourage him. The other students who noticed this were very unhappy, asking how this low-ranking first-year could cope with the spiritual body. They saw that yesterday he failed, so there was no need to encourage him in vain, and this snotty newbie was simply encroaching on Maria's attention. The girl with blue hair, looking straight ahead, asked if this was really so. Then the second-year girl said that she would bet 2 gold coins on the junior succeeding, and a huge number of guys standing right in front of her began to bet on the loss. And Chuck, unhappy with what was happening, asked why they were betting, because he just came to practice. Holding the spear in his hands, the boy thought that it didn't matter, and he just needed to concentrate, and then he could handle it, because he got points for the spirit quest, but he was curious to know how much stronger he had become. Swinging his weapon, he used the sinister snake strike, intending to see the weakest one first. Pointing his spear forward, the protagonist reasoned that last time he won with the sliding snake, the most difficult technique of the snake of calamity, so now, using the weakest one, it would probably be difficult. At that moment, Chuck was greatly surprised when the wind spirits evaporated in an instant. The bettors on his defeat were greatly shocked that he won with 1 strike, and with such a weak technique. With a huge surprise on his face, looking straight ahead, the boy wondered if this was too much. Suddenly, he turned around, seeing Maria there, asking him that yesterday he needed 3 attacks, but today only 1. Looking at the smiling blue-haired girl, Chuck guessed that she must have been watching him yesterday. But more importantly, how could a mage track the attacks of a disaster snake? And she definitely had incredible vision. Immediately after this, the sophomore handed him a bag, saying that he should take it, because it was his share, which greatly surprised the boy. Looking at the upset male students, Maria explained that thanks to him she earned some money, so she should share, and asked if he really didn't like it. Hearing this, the protagonist smiled broadly, thinking that of course he liked it, because there is no person who doesn't like money. Taking the bag of money, Chuck understood for himself that Maria was just smart, and he wanted her to continue to be like that. Immediately after this, the story moves closer to night. The boy ate potatoes and thought that in his past life he desperately honed his skills, but even so he can barely take the 5th of 6 steps to enlighten it. As the protagonist continued to eat, he thought that he still had a long way to go, but he was making progress with the spear faster than he expected, so he wasn't too worried. Drawing Hagalaz right in front of him, for which he didn't have enough mana, Chuck realized that the problem was in rune magic. As he continued to eat his potatoes, the boy thought that in his past life he hadn't been able to figure this out, because rune magic requires an incredible amount of mana. Walking along the dark corridor of the academy, the protagonist thought that if he only solved this problem, he would surely become stronger than his past self, and he needed to think carefully. Suddenly, Chuck heard an unknown voice, freezing in place. The story continued to take place right in the academy, while the boy thought that it didn't matter how hard he tried to hone his spear skills or master rune magic, because in this place there was already someone he couldn't defeat. Looking away in confusion, the protagonist thought that the only heroine that even Jack couldn't defeat was one of the strongest in the heroic legends of Archon. At that moment, Chuck noticed the celestial Yiksha Laura sitting under a tree reading a book right in front of him, and thought that she was the infamous balance breaker, and wondered what she was doing there. Turning away abruptly, the boy reasoned that she even spoke to him, and he didn't understand why, so he was going to just ignore her and leave, because she was a bomb that couldn't be defused. At that moment, the girl with black hair sitting right under the tree declared that they had been united. Staring forward with a serious look, the nun added that she didn't think that he was the master of this body. Hearing this, Chuck suddenly became worried, not understanding what was happening. Looking straight at her in shock, the boy wondered if she knew that he had taken possession of it. Looking straight at Laura, who was sitting motionless on the ground, Chuck thought that she was a very contradictory creature, namely a living corpse, in whose body there was a soul of a human and a demon, which is why it is said that the eyes of those who are stuck between life and death can see the color of another soul. Menacingly looking straight ahead, the boy remained silent, thinking that it would be strange if she did not notice anything. Looking straight ahead, the girl with black hair asked how it felt to destroy and absorb the original soul. Folding his arms over his chest, the protagonist replied that he had no idea, which greatly surprised the student. Imagining the true owner of the body and himself in his form, Chuck wondered if they were different people, and if the memories of him were his own, and if so, who was he who graduated from the Kinesiology Boys High School and military service on Earth? Visualizing himself lying on the ground, the boy reasoned that none of this made sense. Then he thought that the nun was different from him because the original soul was still in her body, when suddenly she, looking straight ahead, declared that he was not the true owner. At the same time, Laura added that he was only a thief and a thief of this body, and that it had no right to it, and the protagonist looked straight ahead menacingly, listening to all this. Watching the black-haired girl sitting under a tree, Chuck said that there was a guy in his hometown neighborhood who turned into a green giant when he got angry, and asked if she knew him, because his name was Bruce, and she didn't understand what he was talking about. Pointing his finger straight at his head, the boy explained that the funniest thing was that his personalities, who hated each other, were good at completely different things, which surprised Laura even more. Looking straight at the night sky, the protagonist stated that he was trying to say that it didn't matter whether it was the original soul or the newly formed one, because they both lived and coexisted together. Looking straight ahead, Chuck connected that whether they wanted it or not, they were already born in this body, and birth is not a sin. Listening to all this, the black-haired girl couldn't say a word. After which she suddenly declared that there are those in this world whose birth is already a sin, which left the boy stunned. The protagonist stared straight ahead, thinking that he knew how much this 3-year-old was suffering right now. Then Chuck turned around and walked away, saying goodbye to the nun. Laura stayed where she was, sitting under the tree, and said nothing. Immediately after that, the story shifted to the next day, when the boy was passing by the houses and asking that this was supposed to be the southern part of the academy. Looking at the notice board, the protagonist reasoned that there was a reason why he left the dorms before the birds began singing for the weekend, and that was the quest board. Looking straight ahead, Chuck mused that it contained large and small bounties that would help him level up before the next main quest, making it a necessary item for the player. Looking ahead, the boy thought that, however, his goal was not to level up, so there was no need to dwell on these missions, and he just wanted to check something. The protagonist was very surprised to see Emma next to him, wondering what she was staring at. Watching the girl pick a mission with a puzzled expression, Chuck thought that he now realized that he didn't know much about her, since that bastard Jack had killed her in her past life. Suddenly, the boy called out to her, and the brown-haired girl bowed and greeted him, to which he asked if she really wanted to take a mission on the first weekend, explaining that he didn't think that as a second ranker, she was desperate for results. Standing right in front of him, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor explained that she needed money, and Chuck, looking straight at her, asked if the academy didn't give her a lot of money. Hearing this, Emma tearfully explained that she didn't get anything because her parents had a very high income. The boy looked straight ahead, puzzled, and thought that this was similar to the scholarship system in Korea, where children from rich families were not given financial aid. At that moment, the brown-haired girl's expression sank even more, saying that in addition, their family believed that children should earn their own living, so no matter how much they asked for money, it was useless, and the protagonist, hearing this, understood that it seemed like she was in a difficult situation. Immediately after that, Chuck pointed his finger forward, saying that if they needed money urgently, they should take a closer look at this patrol mission, because it was a very effective option, and the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, hearing this, was very happy. Standing right in front of the mission board, Emma asked the boy if he wanted to go with her, because up to 3 people were accepted, and he replied that he needed to do something else. Immediately after this, the protagonist took the task of catching a little cat and thought that this was his precious weekend, so he would choose the best task, complete it, and earn points. With a sly grin on his face, saying goodbye to his mother and her daughter, Chuck reasoned that the first task would be to find Butterfly, and he would receive little experience for it, as well as money, but his goal was a commandment. Fighting monsters in the sewers, the boy thought that if he saved and returned the kitten, which almost died at the paws of water monsters, he would be able to save the owner from losing his pet and depression. Having returned the kitten to the little girl, the protagonist received notifications from the system as a result, which happened with the observance of duty, and he did not ignore Anna's misfortune, receiving 5 points for this. Seeing this, Chuck laughed sarcastically, realizing that it worked and that he would be able to benefit from even the simplest tasks, while a little girl with tears in her eyes ran away from him, telling her mother that he was weird. Smiling widely, the boy was going to save the boy who was surrounded by bandits. Thinking only about the attribute points, the protagonist also found the ring, scaring those around him. Suddenly taken aback, Chuck said that there was something more important, and he even made a note of it. While the boy was thinking that he had almost forgotten about it anyway, the story moved to the pub. An angry old man in glasses was slamming his fists right on the table, saying that this was not it either. Standing right in front of the broken furniture, he was arguing that he had used more than 10 ingredients, including garlic, carrots, and peppers. Looking straight at the vat in which the vegetables were simmering, the old man in glasses was thinking that, however, the sauce that could make the chicken tasty even after cooling down had not worked. Suddenly, he looked to the side, hearing someone's voice, and asked who it was. Right in the aisle, the old man in glasses noticed an unknown figure who was declaring that corn syrup needed to be added. It was Chuck, who, with a sly grin on his face, was explaining that then the problem would be solved right away. After saying this, the boy was about to leave, the old man watching him in shock, wondering what was wrong with this crazy bastard. Immediately after this, the chef decided to add corn syrup to the sauce, asking who would even add this ingredient, since it would not change anything. A moment later, the surprised exclamations of the old man in glasses could be heard from right inside the tavern, who declared that this taste was just right. Smiling smugly, the protagonist left there, thinking that he had to do this because the local Koreans were having a hard time without Yangnam chicken. Immediately after this, the system notified him of his duty, that he did not ignore the chef's misfortune and received 5 stat points for this. Seeing this, Chuck was very shocked and could not believe that even such desires activate the commandments. Immediately after this, the boy began to laugh maliciously, saying that it couldn't be better, and a person who cooks chicken cannot be bad. He continued to stand in the middle of the street and laugh loudly, while Laura was watching him from the side. The girl with black hair looked straight ahead, noting that he was strange. But suddenly, right behind her, as if from nowhere, Eva appeared, who said that she was there and left her alone, because she was not going to leave the city, but she had to ask permission if she wanted to leave the academy. Hearing this, the nun only turned away. Noticing such a reaction from her student, the sorceress was very surprised. At the same time, memories of Chuck telling her that birth is not a sin appeared in Laura's head. Then she remembered how an unknown person declared that she should not have been born. Thinking about all this, the girl with black hair watched the sunset. Immediately after this narration, the story is transferred to a dark forest, to a hunting ground. Eva, standing at the podium right in front of the students, was announcing that today they would have to demonstrate their survival skills. Visualizing a map of the area in her head with the paths leading to the house, the academy professor was telling them that if they could reach the cabin in the northern part of the forest, they would pass the test for now. Then the woman with glasses added that they needed to put on the headbands corresponding to their rank, because they could return them at the cabin, while Emma was listening to her attentively. Listening to all this, Louis smirked maliciously, while Eva continued to say that the time spent would affect the number of points awarded for which you can get a prize. At this time, Chuck was looking around, thinking that Laura was nowhere to be seen, and she never participated in practical tasks, when suddenly someone called out to him. Turning to the side, he noticed a brown-haired girl there and asked if she had completed the task, to which she received the answer that she had earned some easy money thanks to him, while he replied that he was glad he could help. A moment later, the boy held out a candy right in her direction, asking if she wanted it, and explained that he had bought the candy for his younger sister, but he himself could not eat it because it was too sweet, and the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, seeing this, asked if it was really a honey bomb and if such a valuable thing could really be eaten. At that moment, Eva waved her whip, drawing the students' attention. When she announced that the test was starting, a magic symbol appeared right above the students' heads. Watching this with a smile on his face, the protagonist thought that he had seen various magicians, but only Madame Eva was capable of creating spatial magic of such a scale, because she was that same great witch after all. A moment later, Chuck found himself in a random place in the forest. Hearing something on the side, the boy turned there and asked if they were already fighting, since the test had just begun. Watching the knights fight each other, the protagonist thought that even skilled people need many attempts to pass the hunting grounds tests, and this is the so-called battle royale, where the player appears at a random point, can score points by getting other people's headbands. Running past the guys who are fighting each other, Chuck thought that they should have fun, and he does not care about them. Releasing red energy from his finger, the boy realized that the most dangerous one there is Emma with a blue headband of the second rank. Directing his magic forward, the protagonist reasoned that since Laura is not participating, if he deals with the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, the rest of the participants will just be free points. Remembering the moment when he shared the candy with the brown-haired girl, Chuck thought that maybe she didn't know, but he had put a tracking rune on that candy. With a crazy grin on his face, the boy explained that thanks to this, they would definitely meet again. Then he continued to walk forward at a rapid pace, laughing loudly, saying Emma's name. At this time, Eva, standing right in front of the chairman, told him that she was also going to the forest, and of course, there were other professors there, but it wouldn't hurt to be on the safe side. Suddenly, the witch looked away in fear, asking where the child was, and whether the chairman did this. With a smile on his face, looking straight at her, Kevin explained that she left on her own, which greatly surprised the academy professor. Immediately after, the chairman gave a positive answer, while at this time, Laura ran forward at a high speed. She was chasing Chuck, while Kevin was about to voice his guess. The nun looked straight ahead menacingly, while the academy chairman declared that something had changed in her heart. The sounds of a fight and shouts that she needed to be caught were heard in the forest. Emma was clearly tired and asked why they were behaving like this, and whether they didn't think it was unfair. Swinging her blade, the brown-haired girl declared that there were many of them, and she was alone. The students lying on the ground, defeated by her, concluded that only her abilities were unfair. Suddenly, a warrior appeared right behind the back of the Sword Emperor's granddaughter, screaming and attacking her, calling her a monster and asking her to pass out already. A moment later, A stone flew at him, throwing him aside, which surprised Emma greatly. Right in front of her, she saw an enraged Chuck and asked if he had just saved her. Immediately after that, the boy said that she was beautiful, and the brown-haired girl who heard this asked him again with admiration in her eyes. Suddenly, the protagonist attacked her with a mad look, repeating that he was talking about her blue armband. Suddenly bursting into tears, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor declared that she believed him, thought that he was a good person who treated her to candy, and Chuck thought that she was a pure physical-type knight of the second rank and was not yet able to use her boundary eyes properly, so compared to other second ranks, Emma's individual combat power was quite mediocre. Grinning maliciously, the boy pointed his finger straight ahead, declaring that she could become a good girl who would give him the armband. Looking straight at the brown-haired girl who was taking a fighting stance, the boy reasoned that although she was no match for her truly genius sister, she was still in the top 1% and had easily dealt with the 7 rank 3 and 4 students who had ganged up on her, so the rank 5 knight did not bother her at all. Then the protagonist added that of course, that was 30 seconds ago, while the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor was parrying her opponent's blow, not realizing what was happening to him. Looking straight at the crazy Chuck, Emma thought that he was very strong. Continuing to fight against the boy, the brown-haired girl parried his blows, thinking about close combat, long-range strategy, and that this guy was playing with her, counterattacking and pressing. Holding the hilt of her blade tightly, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor realized that there were gaps between his attacks, and if she just tried to hit them, she would win. A moment later, she lunged forward, screaming loudly. Her blade passed right through the spear and headed for the boy. Noticing this, the protagonist, with a smile on his face, declared that practice had suffered due to her over-reliance on talent. Immediately after this, Chuck used his weapon to deflect the opponent's strike, thinking that he needed to dodge and reflect the incoming attack. Redirecting Emma's attack straight into the ground, the boy explained that he needed to press on the opponent's weapon. Menacingly looking straight ahead, the protagonist finished saying that at the end he needed to make a straight strike. Seeing this, the brown-haired girl was very dumbfounded. After making several movements with the spear, Chuck thought that these 3 foundations combine and become the simplest and most perfect. Lunging forward, the boy explained that this is all a counterattack. Activating the spear's intent, the supreme essence, he struck straight at the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor. Chuck used the 6th step, a blocking attack, throwing his opponent back. After receiving damage, Emma was thrown aside. She coughed while looking straight at the ground, and realized that if she hadn't blocked this attack with her aura, it would have been dangerous. Gritting her teeth in dissatisfaction, the brown-haired girl thought that it wasn't about strength or speed, and that his skill level was no joke, not understanding who this person was. Looking straight at Chuck, who was emitting red energy, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor couldn't believe that he was a 5th rank knight. After all, she herself had been defeated by him. At this time, the boy happily held the blue bandage in his hand, saying that he would take care of her. Suddenly, a roar sounded right in the middle of the forest, and a voice said that it was unfair. Hearing this, the protagonist quickly looked away, wondering what that sound was. A moment later, he used his spear to block the blow of a huge blade. Looking straight ahead menacingly, Chuck thought that this smaller one was made of a special iron stone that was 4 times denser than steel, and therefore, if he was attacked like this. At the same time, the huge sword flew to the side, and an unknown voice noted that it was pretty good that he blocked it like this. Ethan stood right in front of him, holding his blade in his hand, and explained that he however wanted him to leave this bandage and get lost, addressing the 5th rank. Noticing him, the boy was clearly dissatisfied and thought that it was precisely with him that he did not want to cross paths. Looking at the huge number of defeated enemies in front, the protagonist thought that even having defeated so many opponents, this guy was calm, and there was not a scratch on him. Looking straight at the mercenary controlling the swords, who was menacingly looking straight ahead, Chuck thought that the differences between him and Emma were clearly noticeable. Clutching the blue bandage tightly in his teeth, the boy stated that there was nothing to do, and since this meeting had already taken place, they needed to act. A moment later, the boy began to run away from his opponent, realizing that fighting them was not an option now, so they needed to get out. Seeing this, the guy with gray hair was extremely dumbfounded and did not know what to say. Taking a step forward, Ethan said what was in his teeth. With a menacing look, he asked that there was definitely something blue in his teeth. Destroying everything behind him, the mercenary controlling the swords ran forward, while the protagonist asked what was wrong with these idiots, saying that he thought he did not do things for which he did not get paid. Watching Emma run right after him, Chuck asked why she was doing this, to which he received the answer that he did not want to die and did not yet know where the exit was. Staring straight ahead with a serious gaze, the boy thought that there was no point in fighting and that he only needed to bring the bandage. Suddenly, he noticed something right in front of him, thinking about the hut. In front of him, Eric blocked his way to the house, with the golem standing behind him. The first year who created golems smirked maliciously, saying that if he wanted to pass him, he should give up the bandage. Looking straight ahead with displeasure, the brown-haired girl said that it was unfair to block the only steamship, and Chuck, standing next to her, noted that it was very difficult. Looking straight at Eric, who smirked maliciously, he thought that he was in front. Seeing Ethan quickly running forward, the boy thought that he was behind. Cracking his neck, the protagonist realized that, it seemed, trying to avoid a fight with one, he ran into two at once, and there was nothing to be done about it. Immediately after this, Chuck got into a fighting stance, and the granddaughter of the Emperor of the Sword, who saw this, wondered if he was really going to fight them and would do it at the same time as Eric and Ethan. Menacingly looking to the side, the boy said that if he cannot avoid a fight, then there is no choice. Realizing that now he only had to accept the fight, the protagonist stood and waited for the two opponents to reach him. Immediately after this narration, the story moves closer to sunset in the mountains, where the test was taking place. Suddenly, there was a knock right at the door, and an unknown voice asked who would be the first to pass. At that moment, Chuck, holding a blue bandage in his hands, said his name, asking if he could take his prize. The examiner, seeing him, smiled widely, saying that he brought as many as 3 blue headbands, which is impressive, and the other just laughed. When he said that he was just lucky, the events of the story returned to the moment when the protagonist defeated his 2 opponents. Emma was dumbfounded by what was happening, watching everything from the side. Remembering how Chuck, deftly wielding his spear, reflected the blades, the brown-haired girl reasoned that he pierced the core of the magical blade before the latter reached its maximum power, and deeply plunged the weapon into the ground so that telekinesis would not help to get it out. Visualizing how the boy dodged the sword that flew straight at the golem, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor reasoned that with minimal movements this guy dodged the swords that he could not block, and redirected them into the stone monster. After imagining the protagonist who was right behind Ethan when the golem was heading towards him, Emma added that he then moved behind the enemy, using him as a shield. Immediately after that, the sword-wielding mercenary began to attack the stone monster, and while he was doing so, Chuck neutralized them by attacking the crystals. Immediately after that, the blow landed right on Eric, and he was defeated. Looking straight at the boy who seemed to be emitting red energy, Emma thought that the reaction speed, judgment, and even the vision of psychological warfare seemed to belong to a person who had fought on the battlefield countless times, but the protagonist figured it all out in an instant. The brown-haired girl looked straight ahead in surprise, realizing that his basics of wielding a spear, experience, and techniques used to overcome weaknesses reminded her of her sister. At that moment, a memory of Chuck smilingly saying that the practice had suffered because of her over-reliance on talent appeared in her mind. Thinking about it, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor sighed in relief. Clenching her hands tightly into fists, she declared that she should try hard too. Ethan clutched the hilt of his blade in his hand, thinking that he had been attacked before he could demonstrate his strength, and did not understand who this person was, because it seemed as if he already knew about his techniques and abilities. At this time, Eric was lying right on the ground, trying to come to his senses. Chuck approached him, looking down, explaining that golems are just big targets for small and strong opponents, and in his place he would find a friend to become a guard, to which he received the answer that he did not have anyone. Lying right on the ground in the wreckage of his golems, the mage explained that he did not have friends, which greatly stunned the boy. After listening to him, the protagonist wished him luck, and Eric, after his defeat, only began to cry, calling his opponent a bastard. All 3 guys were on the battlefield, while the plot explained that on that day, 3 freshmen remembered Chuck in their own way. At this time, the boy was happy, holding 3 blue bandages in his teeth, and humming a song, thinking that now there was one strong participant left in the hunting grounds. Imagining in his head the roots of a tree that rise straight from the ground, he reasoned that this is a druid protected by the forest. Having called the name Kate, the protagonist visualized in his head the image of a girl with green hair who uses a magic circle. While Chuck thought that there were not only participants there, someone created a huge ball of water right above his head. The girl looked forward with a menacing look while the boy explained that the strongest opponent was the great mage of the Merkaba Academy. When he said Maria's name, she smiled widely, enveloping herself in water magic. A moment later, the blue-haired girl directed her attack downwards. Immediately after that, the druid was enveloped in water, and the protagonist reasoned that since the elders took on the role of monsters and helped with the practice, Kate was very unlucky to encounter a second-year student. After their battle, Maria happily approached the green-haired girl, asking if she was the new student and telling her name, and she introduced herself in return, while Chuck announced that this trial at the hunting grounds was over. When he stated that it only seemed that way, the blue-haired girl smirked, saying that she would continue now. Turning around, the second year noticed Laura behind her. The nun was glaring straight ahead as Maria asked her name. Looking straight at Laura, who had the boys she had injured lying next to her, Maria assumed that she must be looking for someone, since all of these people looked very similar. She attacked the sorceress with her black hair, but she quickly dodged. A moment later, the blue-haired girl created a huge block of ice right in front of the nun, saying that she was sorry. Maria grinned sarcastically and stated that she could of course ignore him, having conducted the tests, was now a monster, so she couldn't do the same. Laura looked back with displeasure and said that it was really annoying. Immediately after that, the story moved to a hut in the middle of the forest, from where an unknown voice was flying, saying that there were 117 points in total and there hadn't been such a result for a long time, that this was the beginning, the prize. Then Chuck looked straight at the gold cards of several items that were available to him for this amount of points. With a thoughtful expression on his face, the boy thought that the most valuable item of these was shark bear bile, so he knew something. Pointing directly at the mandrake seed, the protagonist with a smile on his face declared that he was choosing it, and the examiner noted that he had a keen eye, because he chose such an item. Then the man with the mustache, looking straight at Chuck, asked what about the remaining 17 points, and Chuck, hearing this, thought about it. A moment later, the boy with a smile on his face showed the cards of plant nutrients and earplugs, asking for them to be given to him. Having received all the necessary items, the protagonist left the hut, saying that he had stocked up well and never once in all his countless attempts to complete the game did everything go well. He then noted that, in addition, for the first time he saw how these guys also passed the test, until Edward appeared right in front of him, saying that he would take second place and 19 points extra, along with Lewis, noting that he got 15. Noticing them, Chuck smiled widely, saying that they worked very hard together, to which Knight 3 replied that it was easy, and suggests that they also practice a little in the training room later. Hearing this, the boy said that if he had so much strength, he should better help find the golem's core. And Eric, who heard this, suddenly shuddered, turning around. Approaching him directly, the protagonist asked that this was an important thing, and announced that they would help with their search, to which the orange-haired guy explained that everything was fine, and he replied that at such moments one should express gratitude. Sighing happily, Chuck reasoned that he had cooperated with Eric quite a lot in his past life, because the role of tank golems in battles with semi-large monsters is very great, and the test had come to an end in the meantime. While the orange-haired guy happily hugged the red crystal, the plot explained that this was a rank 2 mage who also restores the core. Showing us the rank 2 knight Emma, who is holding her stomach, the plot noted that she is injured. Summarizing with the second rank knight Ethan, who is examining the fragments of his blade, the plot said that he lost his combat power. When Chuck noticed Kate lying unconscious on the ground, the plot stated that the second rank mage was dead. A moment later, the boy was picking her up and thinking that she couldn't be dead, and wondered where the professors were looking at, and was it really important to only be alive and not in a normal state, telling Maria that this girl was too exhausted. At the same time, the protagonist felt a sharp shaking in the forest and asked what was going on. Immediately after that, a large number of animals began to run away. Suddenly, Chuck looked at the druid who was telling Maria to run, which surprised him greatly. Imagining a girl with blue hair in his mind, the boy thought that the innate talent for logical analysis and the blessed reserve of mana belonged to a mage who was bypassed by failures, disappointment and despair, and Maria should become the successor of Professor Eva. Then he looked up at the sky and thought that in the hunting ground she controls the difficulty and helps her juniors grow. While Chuck was thinking that it was all like a game, the second-year girl with an exhausted look said that she needed to analyze. Suddenly, she noticed that Laura jumped right towards her. Seeing this, Maria sent magical ice spikes forward. The girl with black hair broke through them without receiving any damage. Noticing this, the girl with blue hair was very angry and began to cast stronger spells, saying that low-level magic would definitely not help block these attacks and that something more serious would need to be used then. While the nun pushed off a huge ice floe with her foot, the protagonist reasoned that although Maria promised the senior professor not to use offensive magic above the average level, to be honest, she had already used several advanced spells. At that moment, the second-year girl looked straight ahead in surprise, while Chuck thought that in other words, she must have denied it, but it had already happened. When Laura kicked Maria right with her foot, the boy thought that she had already used up most of her power. After receiving damage, the blue-haired girl crashed right into a tree. Then she fell to the ground in front of him, trying to recover from what happened. Putting her trembling hand forward, the second-year girl asked him not to come closer, and the protagonist thought that the thing standing in front of her was either a knight nor a mage, and fighting with it was no longer a game. The black-haired girl was enveloped in red energy, slowly walking forward, while Chuck reasoned that it was just a natural disaster in human form. At that moment, Maria, stretching out her hand forward, used her remaining magical power. The bag screamed in fear. She told him not to come closer. Suddenly, unknown particles appeared in the sky, and someone's voice asked Laura to stop. Immediately after that, Eva appeared out of nowhere, asking Maria if she was okay, and she could not believe that it was the professor. Then the blue-haired girl was about to answer her, dissolving her magic power. After saying that she was okay, the second-year student fell unconscious straight to the ground. The academy professor watched this silently. Looking at the huge number of trees in this forest, Chuck came to the conclusion that several surprises were thrown at her during this test. Slowly walking forward, the boy thought that, firstly, it was a rank 5 knight, that is, he who received the most points and became the first to pass. Imagining Maria in his head, who was lying on a hospital bed, The protagonist reasoned that, secondly, a battle took place between the most outstanding first-year student and the strongest second-year student. Chuck looked away with displeasure, thinking that it scared him, because he thought that she woke up as a boss. Well, everything seems to be fine now, so the plot should not deviate from the original. Slowly moving towards the exit, the boy thought that he would just think about it later, because he still had about 3 weeks before the end of Maria's awakening, and now he had other things to worry about. Immediately after that, the protagonist went into the forest, looking around, and reasoned that he came to the edge of the forest of the hunting grounds to meet someone. Then he suddenly raised his head up, thinking that first he needed more eye drops. A moment later, Chuck pretended to slip and fall right into the water, saying that he lost his balance and did not know what to do now. When the bottle fell right into the water, the boy screamed that this was a precious seed given to him by his mother, and was very upset. Suddenly, an unknown voice sounded, asking why he was crying so bitterly, and the protagonist who heard it grinned maliciously, thinking that here he was. Looking straight at the old man who appeared in front of him as if out of nowhere, Chuck thought that he was a hidden element whose power could only be used once in the heroic legends of Archon, and this was the god of the golden axe. Imagining in his head a book with an image of this very man in front of whom the guy was sitting, the protagonist reasoned that there was a very famous fairy tale about a woodcutter boy who dropped his iron axe into a lake for everyone, and about a god asking whether the child owned a gold or silver axe, and since the original was about unique weapons, there was no point in throwing low-level items into the lake. Visualizing the inventory with a huge number of different things, Chuck thought that one experienced player started a game with random items, and some of its participants even threw very rare things into the lake. Kneeling right in front of the god, the boy gave a negative answer when he asked if this was his golden seed or the silver one, while he himself was thinking about what kind of reference the developers left, because what kind of crazy person would throw a mandrake seed received for 100 points into the lake? The old man held out an ordinary seed right in front of him, asking what does it mean, is this his? With tears in his eyes, the protagonist gave a positive answer, saying that this is definitely it, and thought that this crazy person is him. Immediately after this, the god said that even after seeing gold and silver, he did not desire them and remained honest, so he appreciated his honesty and gives all 3, and the boy who heard this imagined the cards of these seeds in his head. Having said all this, the god hid back in a small lake, saying goodbye to the protagonist, who bowed to him and expressed his gratitude, asking him to take care of himself. A moment later, Chuck laughed with a sarcastic expression, rejoicing at the seeds he had received, and said that the item could now be cloned. Visualizing in his head the cards of the gold and silver mandrake seed, the boy thought that an ordinary seed significantly increased the mana reserve, but the gold and silver ones had completely special effects, and these hidden fragments could only be obtained in this way. Imagining Jack and himself, who were enveloped in different energies, Chuck said that the only problem was that Mandrake screamed very loudly, but this was not so important, and in his past life he was suddenly eaten by a gold seed, and he was eaten by a silver one, but now they all belonged only to him. After finishing all his business, the boy was heading back to the academy, thinking that, speaking of the reason why Maria was awakened by the unique rank vampire and the boss of the first arc, it was all about the mission related to the man from the Foggy City, and he didn't know exactly how the demonic factor in her body was awakened, but there was still time. Remembering the moment when the 3 second-rank warriors from the first year stood in bewilderment in front of each other after losing to the protagonist, he thought that the reason he showed off in front of the named characters was because no one would fight alongside a weak knight, and innate talent and strength are the first things that would interest such people. Looking straight ahead seriously, Chuck thought that in a week they would already recover, and that's when he would propose creating a team. Bright moonlight was shining through the window of one of the rooms in the academy, while the boy was wondering how much time was left until the awakening of the boss of the first arc of Heroic Legends, Archon. At this time, Maria, illuminated by the moonlight, rose from her bed, and the protagonist reasoned that it would be a unique rank vampire, which would be held in 3 weeks. Suddenly, the woman in glasses, noticing Maria's awakening, woke up. Sharply jumping up from her seat, she asked if she was okay and how her neck was, explaining that it was the first year who had to restrain herself, because she was limited to low-level magic. The girl with blue hair did not move at all and said nothing, while Chuck thought that if he could prepare well, gain trust and a sufficient number of participants dash. Suddenly looking out one of the large windows of the academy building, the boy realized that then he could easily save this girl from an unhappy fate. At the same moment, the protagonist remembered his battle against Emma, thought that until then he would help her with training dash. Visualizing Ethan menacingly looking forward, Chuck thought that he would hire him to manage the swords. Imagining Kate creating a green magic circle, the boy reasoned that he was telling the druid to participate in his operation. Remembering Eric, behind whom there was a huge golem, the protagonist also concluded that he needed to get close to him in the end. Chuck punched his palm and said that it was perfect, and he just needed to prepare well so that everything would be easy. While the boy was declaring that it would be like that until something unexpected happened, Maria's eyes turned red. At that moment, she looked straight at the girl with glasses, who was very scared. Saying that she was thirsty, the girl with blue hair pounced right on the doctor. Laura put her hand right on the book and said that it was very boring. Sitting at her workplace with a displeased expression on her face, Eva said that she shouldn't have been sent, and if she wanted to learn something, she would personally give her lessons. Then she added that she needed to think about her behavior for now, and the girl with black hair was looking straight out the window, asking what could get out of there and climb over the fence. Suddenly, Chuck appeared out of nowhere right in front of her, saying that he knew she would be there, which surprised her greatly. The boy was hanging upside down on a tree branch, explaining that they had met before, and said his name, asking if she could open the window. Holding a box of cake, the protagonist said that he chose it at random, but she had to take it, and he did not want to come empty-handed, so he grabbed it, and the nun watched him in surprise. Having opened the window, she pointed her finger right at him, concluding that visiting this place is prohibited by the rules of the academy, and Chuck said that he was just sitting in a tree, did not understand what was there, because, apparently, Madame Eva was not there at the moment. Imagining the image of the woman with glasses in his head, the boy thought that he came just in case, but Laura didn't have a scratch, and was she really locked up and forbidden to receive visitors because of what happened at the hunting grounds, and keeping a person locked up like this for more than 4 days, even if she is a special demi-human, so he understands Madame Eva's concern. At that moment, Laura said that she was not just absent, but the professor had been gone for more than 4 days, while the protagonist, who heard this, suddenly twitched in surprise and broke a tree branch. Immediately after that, he began to fall down, asking that she had never visited her during this time, to which he received a positive answer. Then the roar of the fall and the sounds of pain swept through the area. The system notification window notified about the activation of the Resilient Warrior's regeneration. The black-haired girl looked down in surprise while the protagonist said that he was in pain and would see her later and buy her more food then. A moment later, Chuck ran ahead at a great speed, reasoning that Madame Eva had left the most dangerous person in the Merkaba Academy behind, so something unusual was happening. At this time, the blue-robed sorceress flew ahead, asking if he had found her, while Oliver, running next to her, explained that he was going to comb the area. A boy also ran past them, reasoning that these were 2 former guardians, a professor of the magic faculty and a professor of the night faculty, and seeing how these 2 moved, everything immediately became clear. Menacingly looking straight ahead, the gray-haired man asked Chuck what was going on and explained that his request to visit was denied. Showing him a sandwich and a drink, the boy explained that this was not what he came for, and asked if he was a guard from the 3rd group, explaining that Madame Eva had asked him to pass on some food and drink. Taking these things from the protagonist, the knight stated that the madam really did take good care of the inferiors while he was standing right in front of him, mused that his request to visit Maria had been denied, and that Isabel, who was next to her, had disappeared. At that moment, the guard began to eat the sandwich, and Chuck mused that the fact that a guard was introduced to the infirmary in the first place was already strange, and the more they thought about it, the more correct his suspicion seemed. Suddenly, the man with gray hair felt sick and hunched over, and the boy who saw this asked what happened and whether he really had a stomach ache, explaining that, in his opinion, the restroom was that way. Running away from him, the knight asked him to guard the door for a while, because he had to go away, and the protagonist waved his hand, wishing him a safe journey, and declared that she would never come in. With a clearly worried expression on his face, Chuck hoped that he was wrong, and there was still a whole month, and now it was too early. He took the fabric with his hand. The boy really wanted his suspicions to be false. Pulling off the blanket, the protagonist saw a girl lying on the bed, thinking that it was a senior student Maria. Suddenly, his expression changed to surprise, because he realized that in the place where Maria should be, the missing Isabel was lying. Seeing the bite mark on her neck, Chuck reasoned that he no longer had any doubts, and this is what the professor was trying to hide. Looking straight ahead with a frightened expression on his face, the boy thought that Maria had awakened as the first boss, a vampire. Standing right in front of the girl lying in bed, the protagonist realized that this had happened 3 weeks earlier than it should have. While imagining the humans in front of the monsters, Chuck thought that defeating the boss of the first arc would require 3 phases, and the first would require dealing with a wave of monsters, which would be easy enough. When the system announced Phase 2, he visualized the girl using red magic, and thought that magic circles would help contain them. When imagining the humans protecting everything with a barrier, he thought that after gaining an advantage, he would need to deal some damage. When the system announced Phase 3, Chuck visualized magical dragons heading towards the humans, and thought that what would follow would be a battle with a powerful enemy rampaging through the realm of blood. When imagining a vampire girl glaring menacingly straight ahead, he thought that after completing Phase 3, another final phase would activate, and that there would be a key ending mechanic. Visualizing the images of the 3 strongest freshmen, the protagonist understood that even without the player, having collected all the named characters and together, it would not be so difficult to get to the 3rd phase. Immediately after this, Chuck remembered these same characters who had lost their main weapon, and reasoned that Emma was wounded because of him. Ethan had lost his combat power, he was to blame for something, and Eric was restoring the core of Galamo, which was also his fault. Clutching his head in despair, the boy understood that all the named characters were incapable of combat because of him, and now they had come to an end. Remembering an unknown image visible through the smoke, the protagonist reasoned that in the original, after one meeting in a foggy city, Maria attacks her roommate and goes into a rage. Imagining Jack standing at the head of the strongest freshman in front of a huge house, Chuck reasoned that in his past life after it happened, they were waiting under the dorm where Maria and Isabel were to quickly deal with everything. Visualizing the girl, the boy thought that his friend had intentionally put Maria down back then. Remembering how he attacked Emma with his spear, the protagonist understood that, however, everything had turned into a complete mess because of him, and she must have shattered bones. Imagining himself approaching Eric after defeating him, Chuck thought that the home's core had been destroyed, so it was useless, so to speak. At the same time, the boy thought of Laura, thinking that of course he was counting her, but it was unknown how the situation would change if she joined them. Immediately after this narration, the story is transferred to the corner of the training hall, where an unknown voice says that this is some kind of mercenary recruitment committee, and the difficulty is extreme, so they need to find someone and take him alive. With his serious gaze forward, Ethan asked if he was crazy, and explained that mercenaries have a rule not to engage in a fight they can't win, and he also broke his sword, so there were only 2 left, when suddenly he received an offer to do it for 20 gold. Showing the soul dust card in his hand, Chuck stated that if he does not trust him, then he should just take this as collateral, and it has 100% pure composition, without impurity. Seeing this, the mercenary controlling the blades suddenly changed, declaring that he was a desirable employer. At the same time, the system announced that he was joining his group, to which the boy responded positively. The story then moves to the library, where someone is leafing through a book with magical runes. Looking straight at the protagonist standing in front of her, Kate asks how he knew about it, because she thought that all the records disappeared when the forest burned down, and he answers that he read about it in a book once, and asks that she uses Agam and came there in search of him. Abruptly closing the book in his hands, Chuck declares that if she helps him, he will teach her everything. Looking warily straight ahead, the girl with green hair asks what she needs to do. A moment later, the system notifies that she has joined his group, and the boy happily reacts to this. Suddenly the story moves to the cafeteria where Chuck, sitting in front of Edward and Lewis, explains that he is looking for a group, and it is hard, low-paying, and very dangerous, and they may die if they face a particularly powerful demon, but if they succeed, they will receive honor and glory. Hearing this, the boys stare straight ahead seriously, saying nothing in response, and the boy who noticed this thought that this was too much for them. A moment later, the boys smirked sarcastically, saying that it sounded romantic, and they would definitely do it. Seeing their reaction, the protagonist was glad that they were obsessed with romance. Walking forward through the dark forest with the boys he called with him, Chuck thought that in order to survive the first phase, they met the minimum requirements, and this is the best they can do for now. At that moment, the boy remembered Jack, looking straight ahead emotionlessly, saying that after that she cried and hid in the forest. It was very difficult to find her, because who would have thought that such a strong person would express a tunnel in the forest and hide there for a whole month. Staring forward with a serious look, the protagonist thought that he said that Maria was hiding in the forest, and there is only one forest in the Merkaba Academy. The story's narration was transferred to the hunting grounds on a dark night, when suddenly someone asked if she was really here, and this was a senior student Maria. Continuing to follow Chuck straight, Ethan turned to the employer, asking that he understood the goal, but how would they find her, to which he received the answer that it would take a couple of years, and they just need to ask, so there is no need to worry. Then he asked if it was true, and Kate, who was looking straight ahead in shock after hearing this, asked how much he knew. A moment later, the girl with green hair struck her staff right on the ground. Having enveloped everything around with her green magic, the druid addressed the spirits, asking them to lead them to her. Watching this, Lewis was delighted, and Edward, grinning maliciously, said that a bunch of spirits appeared, while the protagonist thought that, judging by their reaction, countless spirits responded to Kate's call. Puzzled, looking to the side, Chuck thought that, of course, he did not see anything, and asked if they found Maria. At that moment, the guys looked straight at the boy in shock, trying to say something, and he asked why they were looking like that and where she was. As soon as they said that there was someone behind him, the protagonist repelled the monster's attack with his spear. With a deft swing of his weapon, Chuck destroyed the monster, asking why so suddenly. Seeing a huge number of monsters that were furiously moving forward, the mercenary controlling the blades told his employer that enemies were approaching from the front, and Lewis and Edward asked if the senior Maria had really become a monster, to which they received a negative answer. At that moment, the guy with glasses took out his grimoire and began to use magic. Taking hold of his mace, the third-rank knight rushed forward, asking how a rabbit dared to attack a hunter, and stated that it was perfect for warming up. Heading straight towards him, Chuck told Edward not to rush forward, because they would surround him. Menacingly looking straight ahead, the boy ordered to take 3 steps back and not to break away, but gradually reduced their number, and also told Lewis to cover the rear, to which he agreed. Immediately after that, the protagonist rushed forward, declaring that Kate should stay with Lewis, and to Ethan that he does not need to explain anything, and he should just not go too far. The mercenary who controls the blades destroyed the monsters, watching Chuck, and thought that he was not confused even by the sudden attack, and he gives the right commands and distributes support, and also this guy is not only strong, but also an experienced leader and strategist, leading the group correctly. The boy deftly handled his spear, while Ethan noted that he was just like a commander, and thought only that the knight of the 5th rank, and there was no point in this, because assigning such a rank is a big mistake. Sharply turning back, Edward asked Kate, who used magic, that he thought that Maria was there, but in the end she was not, and this is an endless wave of monsters, to which she replied that the spirits told her so. Then the question was raised whether Senior Maria was controlling them, and Lewis, who continued to use his magic with the grimoire, explained that such monsters never move in such groups, and they seemed more ferocious than normal individuals. While destroying another monster, the boy explained that Maria was not a puppeteer or anything like that, she could not control these monsters so easily, and even if it were possible, she would not control them so unreasonably. When the boys dealt with all the enemies, Ethan asked what it was then and why they were being attacked, when suddenly the protagonist said that there was something else. With his head slightly down, Chuck explained that the monsters were attacking according to their tents, and perhaps a situation had accidentally arisen that made them forget about their usual tents. When he added that it was something that they simply could not resist, all the other members of his group were very scared. At that moment, Maria appeared right in front of them in the form of a vampire, and the boy said that that was why they had to run. Noticing the enemy, the protagonist said to prepare for battle and gave the order to Lewis and Kate to go to the rear, and they immediately obeyed his order, jumping back, saying that there was no peace for a minute with him, and asking if this would work. Immediately after that, Chuck ordered Ethan and Edward to take a step back again, because they were in support, and they were preparing their weapons for battle, and the first one, that it seemed like he had a plan, so trust him, and the second one was wondering whose move should be made. Menacingly looking straight ahead, the boy concluded that he himself would be in front. Suddenly, a system notification window appeared right in front of him, notifying him of the 3rd commandment, that he would save the world, and the current target was Maria, so stamina was increased by 50%. A moment later, the system notification window showed Chuck's stats with added bonuses. Tightly gripping the handle of his spear, the boy thought that this was Maria's fate, and the impact that she would have on this world. The buffs he received must not be based on the one-time event of the first arc, but on the impact on the world that it would have in the future. When the system within the commandment about saving the world showed a hint to take the first step towards saving the world and stop Maria. Having agreed to this, the protagonist together with his allies were fully prepared for the upcoming battle, saying that they would definitely do it. The system notification window notified about the commandment about saving the world, that it was necessary to take the first step towards saving the world and stop Maria. Suddenly, a system error appeared right in front of Chuck, which stated that there was a contradiction with the first commandment, that he undertakes not to ignore the misfortune of good people. While the vampire girl was emitting a huge amount of dark energy around herself, moving forward, the system notified that the scenario had been updated. At the same moment, the system window changed its color and announced that it was necessary to save Maria. The girl with blue hair was crying, making incomprehensible sounds. Seeing this, Kate was very shocked, noticing that she was crying, and Ethan, who was standing right next to her, concluded that this did not change anything, and they had to subdue the demon. Immediately after that, he pointed his huge blade straight at the vampire. A moment later, the mercenary who controlled the swords was very surprised. Seeing how his sword was stopped by an unknown red barrier, the guy with white hair said in surprise that his heavy iron sword was blocked. Dumbfounded, looking straight ahead, Lewis explained that this sphere was a familiar born from the blood of a vampire, and who would have thought that a recently awakened vampire could immediately create such a sphere. Menacingly looking to the side, the boy noted that there was no need to be afraid, and this was only a newborn who could not normally receive Maria's blood and mana, so for now he was only able to block attacks. With a serious expression, looking straight at him, Ethan declared that the familiar covered the greatest need of the mages, that is, the need for protection, and this is a serious problem, and the protagonist, awkwardly scratching the back of his head, declared that everything was fine. At the same moment, the vampire sharply directed the blood attack forward, telling his opponents to disappear, and Chuck, noticing this, said that a long-range attack in the area was approaching. Then he called out to Kate, and she, touching directly to the ground, activated the magic circle, saying that she knows everything. Pouring her mana directly into the ground, the girl with green hair explained that she knows little about other places, but now they are in the forest. Immediately after that, she declared that this is her stage, and right in front of the guys, out of nowhere, tree roots appeared, blocking the attack, while the system announced that this is rapid growth and protection of spirits. At the same moment, the blood attacks caught up with the wall of trees. Using all her strength, the druid tried to hold them. Watching this, Edward was very scared, asking what if the defense fails, and the guy with glasses standing behind him asked not to say such a thing. Kate used her magic, putting her hand straight in front of her, and thought that she had already lost half of her mana from the reserve, and after the test at the hunting grounds, her mana heart was pulsating. While she was thinking that she should endure, Chuck made a cut on the wall of trees and asked that she had already reached her limit. The druid thought that everything was because this man gave her a ridiculous promise, and the protagonist standing right in front of her asked her to hold on a little longer, because in just 5 moves they would switch. The girl with green hair, tensing up greatly, asked if he would keep his word, to which he replied that of course it was possible. While he was thinking that all this was connected with the current Maria, she, in the form of a vampire, continued to use her blood attacks. Again imagining humans against monsters, Chuck mused that the boss fight was divided into 4 phases, and in the first, the surrounding monsters would attack the player. Visualizing a vampire girl using her magic, the boy reasoned that in the second, Maria would appear in person once the monsters were defeated, and that he would need to complete all the stages after the second phase to get to the final mechanic of the boss. Imagining Maria staring straight ahead with her mouth wide open, the protagonist understood that in other words, she had not used her full power until this point. While he realized that everything was the same as it was in the game and his past life, the blood attacks continued to destroy the wall of trees. Chuck quickly turned around and turned to Lewis, saying that he would leave before Kate, since he could only use a few low-level spells, and Lewis, upon hearing this, asked if he had really calculated this too. Standing at the head of his team, the boy announced that he had worked hard, and as soon as the druid joined him, they should immediately go as far away as they could, and the guy with glasses said that he understood everything and began to run away. Looking straight at the cracks that appeared on the wall of trees, the protagonist thought that there had been many large-scale attacks so far, but they were not very powerful, and the real problem was something else. Thinking that everything was in the alchemical magic that followed these attacks, Chuck saw how red magic crystals appeared right on their cover. Menacingly looking straight ahead, the boy realized that it was approaching. When the entire wall of trees was covered in red crystals, the system notified that this was alchemical freezing magic. At that moment, they began to explode, destroying all cover. The guys, seeing this, were very scared, screaming that it was crumbling. Kate was reading a spell that the earth that feeds trees and grasses, gods and bugs, dust and ashes that allow to keep the world filled, while sweat was running down her face from fatigue. At the same moment, a crown of branches appeared right on the druid's head, and she herself began to use special runes available only to her kind. Suddenly, the earth around began to crack, and Chuck, who saw this, realized that they were reacting. Menacingly looking straight ahead, the boy thought that although he was the one who engraved the words, only a pure-blooded druid would be able to activate them. Then trees began to break out of the ground. The protagonist, watching all this, thought that there was a similarity with runes, but in fact this is an ancient text with its own system and methods that belong to another time of antiquity, and secret writings that can only be obtained by passing the line with Kate, during which she becomes the sage of the forest. While Edward and Ethan stared ahead in fear, Chuck reasoned that these were forest sages, protectors of nature, writings on a 1,000-year-old monument that belonged to a clan that was greatly loved by the spirits. At that very moment, a huge wooden golem appeared right above the boys, and they asked what it was, and the system announced that it was a wicker man, a giant willow doll. Dumbfounded, the green-haired girl could not believe that it had actually been summoned, and the boy who looked at her thought that it was unfair, of course, to help her with the summoning, but in this situation there was simply no other way. A moment later, the protagonist pointed his finger directly at Edward, telling him that among the monsters there was still a living owl bear and they needed to throw it to the wicker man, and he asked that there really was still a living monster out there. After some time, the third-rank knight said with delight that he was right, it turns out, and this bear is still alive, and Chuck, smiling happily, hearing this, thought that he had prepared all this, although they must not have noticed while they were fighting. Then the boy shouted to hurry up and throw it already, and Edward, who heard this, immediately obeyed the order, throwing it straight at the golem of the monster. A moment later, the huge owl bear landed right on the willow giant. At that moment, the wooden golem incinerated it and absorbed it inside itself, and the third-rank knight standing below was very surprised by this. Bright yellow flames penetrated straight into the wicker man's chest, and Chuck, watching this, thought that while the victim was burning inside him, this magic weapon like a golem can move. At that moment, attacks from the blood began to hit the huge golem. He was given the order to attack. Immediately after that, he swung his hand sharply, destroying the magic heading towards him. At the same time, Kate suddenly grabbed her chest and began to writhe in pain, and the boy who saw this thought that this was too much for her, and at this rate of events, it would be difficult for her to hold out for even a minute. Suddenly turning around and looking in her direction, the protagonist asked her not to give up, because if she stopped controlling him, then they would all die, and she replied that she knew it. At that moment, the Wicker Man approached the vampire girl directly. Noticing him, Maria immediately sent forward a huge number of blood spears. Watching how the second-year girl's attacks hit the wooden golem right away, the guys asked if this was normal, and Chuck replied that there was no need to worry. The two guys watched everything that was happening in amazement, while the boy thought that the Wicker Man was not a living being, but a structure, and it would not break if a couple of holes appeared in its body. If you think logically, in the fight between ice and fire, the winner is obvious. Looking straight at the bloody spear, which was rapidly moving forward, the protagonist realized that he had thought so before. Suddenly, this very weapon pierced the wooden golem. Watching this in fear, Chuck thought that all this was until the Wicker Man's fire went out. At that moment, a huge wooden golem fell right next to the guys. Gritting his teeth in dissatisfaction after everything that happened, the boy thought that common sense was turned upside down and crumbling before his eyes. Looking straight at the reincarnated Maria, the organist reasoned that this was a special level of difficulty. At that moment, Kate fell to the ground, writhing in pain, and received an order to retreat, which surprised her greatly. When she wanted to object, Chuck, with an emotionless expression on his face, explained that her presence there would not change anything. Realizing this, the girl with green hair began to run away, and Edward, spreading his arms to the sides, asked if they could handle it themselves. Slowly raising the blade of his spear up, Chuck asked if they understood what it meant that she used all her long-range attacks. A moment later, the boy with a crazy expression on his face rushed to attack, declaring that it was time to deal with her. Frightened, looking straight at him, the third-rank knight asked him to wait for them. Noticing the approach of the opponents, the vampire girl sent her bloody spears forward. The three guys fought their way through her attacks, continuing to move forward. Using his blade, Ethan activated the communication transmission. Activating direct acceleration, he sent the heavy sword straight into the red sphere, which was protected by a barrier. Looking straight ahead with a menacing expression, the mercenary controlling the blades noticed that it was very strong. At the same time, Edward soared into the air right above his head. A moment later, he was striking directly at the barrier with his mace. Watching this with joy, Chuck thought that this was a special attack of increasing destruction, and the power of the attacks he encountered was accumulating, and this was a very useful thing. Smiling widely after the attack, the third-rank knight said that he had finally broken through the defense, when suddenly someone shouted at him not to relax. Immediately after that, the system announced that Phase 3 had been activated, and Maria's eyes turned red. Then everything around the vampire girl was covered in blood, and the system announced that this was the Kingdom of Blood. Right in the middle of the forest, a space immersed in black and red energy appeared. The blade and mace lay directly on the ground. Chuck held on with all his might while his allies lay unconscious behind him. With his head slightly lowered, the boy thought that when the blood sphere collapsed, it would activate a trap that they were now stuck in. The protagonist looked straight at Maria, who had summoned a huge blood wolf. Chuck sighed heavily, realizing that he had never even thought that he would be the last one left, and how to explain it. By the third phase there usually needed to be at least 3. Immediately after that, the boy declared that it didn't really matter, because the result would be the same, and enveloped himself in blue energy. A red moon shone right in the sky, while Maria thought that a person was able to distinguish cattle from people. The story took place right in one of the wings of the academy, while the girl with blue hair continued to reason that it was natural for a person to squint and cover their eyes when they saw the desperate struggle of cattle that did not want to die. Opening her eyes, the sophomore saw a blurry image of the ceiling, thinking about the strange air currents. She opened her eyes, thinking about the chill running from her spine to her toes, which contrasted with the sensations burning her throat. Suddenly, Maria looked sharply to the side. There she saw a girl who was dumbfoundedly calling her name, and thought that the neck of an unknown person was very attractive. At that moment, the girl suddenly pounced right on her friend, realizing that she had bitten her. At this time, Isabel was crying, and the sophomore reasoned that her fangs so naturally, as if they had always been there, tore the skin and reached the vessels, and then the cattle shook absent-mindedly. Continuing to bite her friend right on the neck, Maria thought that it was either because of fear of the butcher or furious resistance, she did not know, but it did not matter so much, because she did not even feel the need to close her eyes or cover them. Isabel was shaking all over while her friend was doing these terrible things to her, and the girl herself thought that the sounds of painful groans were sweeter and more beautiful than a melody played on the piano, and the warm blood rushing into her mouth irrigated her throat, flowed through it, and warmed the cooled skin. After some time, Maria was sitting upright on the bed, splashed with blood, and felt how her blood vessels dilated again. Looking straight at the blood stains on the sheet, the girl thought that Isabel's groans and the creaking of the bed had stopped. Gripping her face, the sophomore realized that all that was left was the pulsating heart that was spreading throughout her entire body, and the delicious smell of blood was choking her to the point of disgust. Removing her hands from her face, Maria saw her friend lying on the floor and thought that she had finally realized that her body, which seemed to be filled with life force, now seemed to be collapsing, and there was no cattle there. Looking straight at the moon shining brightly in the night sky, the girl realized that she had committed a crime, which turned out to be the murder of a friend. With tears in her eyes, the sophomore reasoned that she had taken the life of some animal, and, in fact, even worse. Immediately after that, Maria ran into the forest and, realizing that she had mistaken a person for cattle, grabbed her starving stomach. Thinking that in the end she had simply run away, the girl continued to go deeper into the forest. Looking straight at Chuck, who was standing right in front of her releasing his blue energy, the second year realized that she had been hiding until the boy came for her. At that moment, a huge blood wolf appeared right in front of the boy, screaming loudly. Suddenly it puffed out its cheeks, as if it was about to spit something out. A moment later, blood spikes were directed from its mouth straight towards the protagonist. Calling him a fucking dog, Chuck swung his spear using the fourth strike of the 6 steps technique. Asking how dare he bite people, the boy walked straight towards the blood wolf and activated the reverse heaven rotation skill. Noticing the enemy approaching, the monster grabbed its chest. Sharply waving its hand, it summoned 2 blood dogs. Looking at this with a malicious grin on its face, the protagonist noticed that he really was some kind of dog. A moment later, Chuck would slide right under the hounds, passing them. The handle of his spear was tightly gripped in his hand, and the boy would use the 5th step of the 6-step technique. Once he was right behind the hounds, the protagonist would use a mountain throw, throwing his weapon right at them. After completing the attack, Chuck would take his spear back, hopefully as some sort of salute. Looking back menacingly, the boy noted that it was nothing compared to his screams at the beginning, and wondered if there was anything else. Staring straight ahead furiously after hearing what he had heard, the blood wolf was clearly very displeased. In that moment, he instantly appeared right in front of his opponents. Looking around warily, Chuck could not believe that he had disappeared, and realized that he was moving so fast that he was simply invisible. Realizing this, the boy grinned maliciously, asking that maybe he should teach this dog a lesson. While he was saying that 100 steps were not needed to win, because something else was more important, the monster moved forward at incredible speed. When the protagonist said that it was important to find the enemy's weak points in 1 step, he sharply dodged the blood wolf's attacks. With a wide smile on his face, Chuck concluded that he did not have a chance, because he had shown him everything in advance. At that moment, a sudden light flashed as the boy used the Serpent of Calamity. A moment later, the protagonist attacked his opponent with a spear, as if releasing the snake, using the ascending serpentine breakthrough of the poison dragon to the sky. After this attack, the black and red sphere in the middle of the forest began to crack. In an instant, it was destroyed, disintegrating into small fragments. Chuck was there, watching the dome collapse right before his eyes. Everything around was covered in small red particles. The blood wolf was lying right on the ground, grunting in pain. It tried to raise its paw with its last strength, and the boy who saw this asked that he would really protect his creator until the very end. With his spear right from the ground, the protagonist asked if this was really his sin, and asked him to just wait. Then he looked menacingly to the side, declaring that he would definitely save his mother. At that moment, Chuck looked straight at Maria as a vampire, thinking that the final phase would now begin. Immediately after that, the girl suddenly jumped up, and the boy who saw this thought that as soon as it begins, Maria puts one of the group members in a critical condition. A moment later, the classmate appeared in the sky right in front of the brightly shining moon. Adjusting his shirt, Chuck thought that this is why he won't be able to cope alone. When the vampire girl appeared right in front of him, about to attack, the boy reasoned that usually, in order to save the victim, all the members of the group stick together in order to stop her, if necessary. Looking straight ahead, the protagonist realized that no one would help him now. Then the second-year girl bit right into his throat, and the system notified that the boss was sucking blood, and Maria's stamina and mana were restored. The vampire girl sat right on top of the protagonist, and drank blood from his neck, and he wondered if this is what it felt like to be deprived of life. Clenching his hand tightly into a fist, Chuck decided that everything was fine and he could endure it. The boy thought that he had some skill and he should be able to do it someday, and the system notified that the regeneration of a steadfast warrior was activated, and as long as he, like a warrior who had not lost his fighting spirit, retained an incredible will, his body would be restored. Gritting his teeth from the pain, the protagonist understood that he was only giving back. Remembering how Maria shared potatoes with him with a smile on her face, Chuck thought that he was giving back what this kind little girl said to everyone while sharing food, holding out her small palms. Putting his hand right on the vampire girl's head, the boy reasoned that he should help since he was an adult. Hugging her, the protagonist told her not to rush, or she would choke. After some time, Maria stopped drinking his blood. Having finished doing this, the girl looked straight ahead with tears in her eyes. At that very moment, a memory appeared in Chuck's head, how Jackson sat right on his knees in front of the man he had killed, and thought that after waking up, he took the life of his servant, drinking his blood to the last drop, and even the military leader, whose name remained in history, could not resist the desire to drink blood. Visualizing Maria drinking blood from a monster, the boy reasoned that Jack spent only a month to catch her, and she drank only the blood of monsters, which, like sea water, only fueled her thirst. Remembering how he saw her in the reservoir in his friend's secret basement, the protagonist understood that she had not yet killed people and had overcome her thirst and desire to drink blood thanks to her inhuman willpower. Looking at the night sky, Chuck realized that this was unnecessary for the boss, who would only have a bad ending, and therefore there must be another outcome. At the same time, Maria's tears fell directly onto his neck, and she called him little one, while he reasoned that at least he wanted to believe it. The girl began to cry and asked for forgiveness, and the protagonist, looking straight at her, thought that it did not matter how many times she crossed the line and whether she was a first-level mage, and that the fact that she was a vampire was an insignificant problem. Looking straight ahead with kind eyes, Chuck thought that maybe he, too, looked at this little girl as just a character, but the teachings of his mentor from this world turned him into a completely different person. At that moment, he remembered the woman holding the spear in her hands, which said that she was an adult, and therefore it was her duty to protect him, and reasoned that the character he looked down on, reading for the NPC, protected him, calling him a child. As Maria continued to cry, sitting on top of the boy, he realized that as her heir and student, who saw the last moments of the teacher, and also understood and absorbed her teachings, it would be good if he showed himself from a slightly more mature side. With a smile on his face, looking straight ahead, the protagonist asked Jack to just watch, because his path would be different from his. At the same time, the system notified about the end of the quest with Maria of S-rank difficulty and gave out certain rewards. The narrative of the story is transferred to a spatial prison, which was created by Professor Eva, a master of spatial magic, and looks like a medieval castle, when someone unknown says that it looks incredibly delicious. Maria holds a potato in her hands with joy on her face, saying that she missed it very much. For a moment, she was very scared by the appearance of the youngest, when he appeared right in front of her cage with a smile on his face and wished her good morning. Looking sharply at the woman with glasses standing behind him, Chuck asked if he could come in. She asked if nothing would happen to him for sure, to which he replied that he trusted her. While the girl with blue hair tried to cough, the boy entered her cage and asked her to eat more slowly, because he would choke, and asked who serves boiled potatoes without water. The protagonist looked warily straight at his friend. He then said that he thought that her taste preferences would change, but to his surprise she enjoyed potatoes, and asked if she really liked them that much, and the second year, hearing this, smiled widely, explaining that potatoes are always delicious and have an amazing taste, no matter how they are prepared. Opening her eyes, Maria became very embarrassed, seeing Chuck very close to her, who asked if this was really true. Immediately after this, the girl with blue hair began to hit him, asking him to move away from her, because she smelled bad now, and the boy blocked her blows, asking if she was really acting like this after everything that happened, and when she bit his neck, he was not very washed either. Having finished her attack on her friend, the second year sat down right in front of the bars, and the protagonist sighed with relief, noting that she did not stink that much. Suddenly, Maria said that she was scared, and Chuck, looking straight ahead, apologized. The girl with blue hair, lowering her head down, explained that the girl, Laura, was quite scary, and she thought that she was really going to die, so she was so scared that she couldn't cope, just like him. Without saying anything in response, the boy lowered his eyes down and thought that he met the girl with black hair and awakened something in her, made her change her mind and participate in the practice on the hunters. Imagining in his head the nuns' battles from the second year, the protagonist thought that Laura accidentally met Maria during practice, and in order to fight the first-level mage, she used her real power, which provoked Maria, and the vampire inside her awakened. Imagining Chuck destroying the wind spirit during his training, the blue-haired girl asked how he was able to get up, why he didn't give up, just like that time with the spirit bodies, because everyone laughed at him, saying that he couldn't do it, but in the end he did it. When she added that he was really cool, the boy, a little embarrassed, explained that it wasn't that impressive. Then he said that he liked happy endings, and the second-year girl, hearing this, smiled a little. Sitting right on the bed, the protagonist was telling about how good guys are rewarded and bad guys are punished, and something like that, obvious, but touching and instructive stories. Remembering the image of the friendly Maria, who waved her hand at him, Chuck declared that she was a good person, nice and sweet. Awkwardly scratching his cheek, the boy concluded that he liked good endings, if they were possible. Then the protagonist explained that he was trying to say that he wanted her to be happy, and Maria, hearing this, suddenly blushed with embarrassment. Continuing to sit right next to the cage, the girl with blue hair asked the youngest to leave, because she needed to wash up and finish her potatoes, and he, looking straight at her, said that he had just arrived, but so be it. With a wide smile on his face, Chuck waved to his girlfriend, saying that they would see each other again. When he told her before the meeting, the second year smiled widely and mentally thanked him for comforting her. Maria continued to sit upright in her cage, thinking that she herself was not sure if she had the right to be happy. The boy slowly walked along the red carpet, arguing that Maria was isolated only temporarily, and after what happened, of course, it would be difficult to immediately return to normal life, but he believed that this isolation would soon end. Imagining in his head the image of Laura sitting under a tree and reading a book, the protagonist reasoned that since one representative of the half-humans attends the academy without any problems. Continuing to slowly walk along the corridor of the academy, Chuck thought that many people would not feel any threat from the fact that Maria is a half-human. Suddenly, someone called out to the boy, and he sharply looked away. It was Kevin, who asked with a smile on his face if he would spare a minute of his time, and the protagonist asked again that it was really the chairman. Continuing to smile widely, the chairman of the academy explained that they were meeting in person for the first time, and asked how he felt, and Chuck, awkwardly scratching the back of his head, explained that everything was fine, and asked what he wanted. At that very moment, Kevin said that it was about punishing Maria, and the boy who heard this suddenly became frightened, asked again about it. Dumbfounded, looking straight ahead, the protagonist thought that he could not even imagine that they were deciding to punish her, and was there really no happy ending? Spreading his arms out to the sides, Chuck asked the chairman to wait, because he could explain everything, and he declared that everything was fine and the decision about her punishment had already been made. Hearing this, the boy still asked to listen to him as the one who fought with her, and asked who makes decisions about punishment so quickly, until Kevin's expression completely changed. With a clearly frightened expression on his face, Chuck tried to say something about the seniors and Maria, when suddenly the chairman of the academy said that this was what he expected. With a wide smile on his face, Kevin explained that there was no need to worry and there was no punishment, which greatly surprised the boy. Looking straight at the stunned protagonist, the chairman of the academy said that he also did not consider Maria dangerous, so he wanted to personally see the reaction of one of those who entered into battle with her, and now he had no doubts about the decision made. Looking kindly straight ahead, Kevin stated that there was no need to worry, because the isolation would soon end, and first they needed to confirm the stability of her condition. Then the man would add that, of course, he had heard the stories of the other students, but he was interested in hearing everything in detail, and everything was fine, so it would be okay to use simple words, after which he would ask if he would tell him what had happened, and Chuck, who had heard this, would breathe a sigh of relief. Immediately after this, the boy, spreading his arms out to the sides, would say that Maria was not dangerous and that this little girl was not a monster, and he would think that he was not sure how much the chairman had believed him, but his message had been clear and open. After listening to the student, Kevin, with a thoughtful expression on his face, said that now everything was clear to him, and thanked him for telling him, and now they would have to make an official statement in connection with this, but of course, they would not be able to reveal everything. The academy chairman also added that in any case, now that he had heard all the details, it was time to do his job, and Chuck, who was standing right in front of him, was suddenly surprised. A moment later, Kevin bowed deeply and thanked the boy, and the latter, seeing this, took a step back, asking what the problem was. While Professor Eva adjusted her glasses, the academy chairman explained that he was grateful for helping them prevent the danger caused by the inexperience and arrogance of adults, and was very grateful to him and asked for forgiveness, so if there was anything he needed, he would do his best to repay him. Hearing this, the protagonist smiled slightly, reasoning that Kevin acted very honorably for the academy chairman, and this man always acknowledged his weaknesses and tried to take on as much responsibility as possible. At the same time, an image of a woman with a spear appeared in Chuck's mind, which said that although she had experienced countless failures, he had never been part of them. Immediately after that, the boy thought with a smile on his face, wait, remembering the words spoken to him in his past life, he believed in his goodwill and asked him not to bow his head. When he added that this was his request, the academy chairman suddenly smiled. At this time, Maria was sitting on her bed and thinking about something. The memory of Chuck hugging her and telling her to slow down or she would choke would float through her mind, and she would think that the hand that stroked her back was gentle, and the skin it touched was warm. Then the girl with blue hair imagined herself stopping sucking the boy's blood, and him telling her that everything was fine and all was well, while she thought that her common sense, which had floated away, was pushed aside by the waves of surging emotions and finally reached the shore. Through her bitter tears, the sophomore thought that then the cold-blooded beast let her go, and humanity returned once again. Remembering how she cried after everything that happened and said that she was so sorry, Maria thought that the only thing she repeated over and over again was an apology. Still lying in her bed, the blue-haired girl clutched her head, wondering what right she had to ask for forgiveness and whether Isabel was okay, because she was one of those people who loved others more than anything in the world, and because of this, the feeling of guilt was eating away at her. The sophomore was surrounded by purple magic, and the plot explained to us that this was why the girl did not resist Madame Eva's magic at all, who imprisoned her, but simply resigned herself and locked herself behind iron bars. Showing the moment of Maria's confusion when Chuck came to her, the plot told us that at that moment she pretended that everything was okay, but in fact, she was exhausted. Visualizing the vampire girl who used her dark magic, the plot also explained that she was a beast, monsters and demons, an enemy of people who from time to time thirsted for their blood. Then the plot showed us the events when the boy, awkwardly scratching his cheek, explained that he really wanted Maria to be happy, and explained that one phrase of his sent all her worries and doubts flying. The girl with blue hair remained in her bed and cried, while we are told that more than ever before, these words rang with honesty, because she remembered the selflessness of this boy and how he sacrificed his body to save the monster. She thought about that transitional moment, about sincere goodwill and self-sacrifice, looking straight at the small window in her prison. Maria lay down right on the bed, thinking about the youngest, and the plot explained that then she realized that part of her life will forever be immortalized in memory. Chuck suddenly heard someone discussing some rumors. The academy student, looking straight at his friend, said that it was the senior student of the magic faculty, Maria's best student, and the latter asked if it was really that same senior potato, while the boy was thinking that a week had passed since that incident. Then the protagonist came to the cooking class, which was equipped with all the necessary items for cooking, and reasoned that even though a little chaos had begun because of the bastards who were against Maria being left in the academy, it quickly died down, because the academy had long been obediently attended by the half-human Laura. Suddenly, someone asked if she was still isolated, and heard that the senior did not attend classes, so it was really dangerous, and the protagonist, who looked away after hearing what he heard, wondered if they were really discussing this even after a week. The girl with blue hair slowly walked along the corridor of the academy, while Chuck explained that Maria's isolation had officially been lifted. The students were asking her if she was okay, because they had heard that it had become special, and so they were expressing their congratulations, and the second year was looking around, thinking that she was not there. Looking straight at the guys, Maria was looking for Isabel, who was still not there. The girl with blue hair was sitting on her bed, thinking that she was probably afraid of her and hated her, while the plot explained that this did not mean that she herself was ready to break free. Immediately after that, the second year remembered the moment when she bit her friend, and thought that even she would not want to have a friend who bit off a piece of her, and did not want to interfere with Isabel and the others. Very upset after thinking about everything, Maria lowered her gaze downwards. Looking straight at the bag of blood, the girl with blue hair decided that she must disappear from this academy. Suddenly she heard a knock on the door and, turning sharply to the side, asked who was there. Thinking who could have come at such a time, the second-year girl approached the door and opened it. At that very moment, Isabel jumped right on her and started hugging her. With tears in her eyes, the girl with glasses asked how her friend was feeling, which surprised her greatly. Waving her arms, Maria asked why she was there, and Isabel asked that she really wasn't allowed to come, to which she received the answer that nothing of the sort, and that it was simply surprising, until the girl with glasses asked that she really didn't want to see her, and the girl with blue hair said that it was not like that at all. Suddenly, the second-year girl asked if she was afraid of her, and Isabel, looking straight ahead in surprise, did not understand anything. A moment later, the girl with glasses smiled and apologized, explaining that she had seen everything before she passed out. At the same time, Isabel remembered the expression on Maria's face, who was crying while covering her mouth, and explained that she had seen her face after the bite, and she did not know what to do, and was tormented by guilt. Bringing her hand to the blue-haired girl's face, her friend declared that no matter what happened, she would still consider her friend, so the past was not important. Leaning her forehead against the second-year girl's, Isabel declared that she wanted her to think of her as a friend, and asked if she understood her. Hearing her friend's words, Maria began to cry and expressed her gratitude, saying that she thought she would hate her, and the girl with glasses wondered if she had really been suffering there all alone all this time. Then Isabel concluded with a wide smile on her face that, to be honest, she had been feeling well for a long time, but the hospital had told her not to go out for a while, so she couldn't come even when her isolation was lifted, and if it weren't for that junior year who had secretly brought her here, then nothing would have happened. After which she asked where he had gone, because there had just been a tall guy behind her, and the blue-haired girl, looking straight ahead in surprise, thought that it was the junior. At this time, Chuck was walking straight down the academy corridor, thinking that a girl like Maria could be trusted, and she wouldn't break down because of such an incident. At the same time, the blue-haired girl covered her face in embarrassment, which stunned her friend, and thought that now everything was clear, and he had helped her this time too. Looking straight ahead, the second year was thinking specifically about the junior Chuck. Looking straight up at the sky on this beautiful day, the boy thought that this is how the first part of the story ended, with a happy ending for everyone, and this was not the case in his past life. Looking straight at Professor Eva and Kevin, who were standing with smiles on their faces, the protagonist thought that, of course, several unforeseen circumstances arose, and not everything went according to plan, but that is precisely why he likes the outcome much more. Being right next to the academy dormitories, Chuck realized that even without the player, the world does not stand still, and even if you do not follow the plan, there are still better endings. With a wide smile on his face, the boy thought that this moment helped mark the beginning of a new world. The spectators were located in the stands. The hero said that his schedule mainly consists of classes, lunch, training, dinner, more training, and it is quite dull. The guy held a weapon in his hands and reasoned that he must become stronger. Given the impending events, he needs to do this as quickly as possible. The hero waved his stick, activating magic. He used the Serpent of Calamity, Ascending Serpent Heaven, Poison Dragon Breakthrough. Chuck turned his gaze, hearing someone exclaim. The girl stood in front of him, smiling, saying that it was amazing, and that he was working hard today too. The guy made a remark, saying that she was acting as if nothing had happened. Maria said that it was great, and that he should be fed properly for his hard work, saying that she had prepared a little. But let him help himself, there was a lot of food in front of him. The guy said that it was a lot, and all of it was potatoes. The hero looked at the dinner and said that he was hungry as hell, so he would eat it with gratitude. The girl smiled and wished him a pleasant appetite. The hero stretched out his hand, something flowed out from under the bandage. Maria looked in surprise, thinking that it was blood. The guy, while eating, asked what was wrong, if there was something on his face. The girl turned around and, closing her eyes, screamed. She thought about seeing blood and drooled. The hero asked if she was drinking blood now. The girl put the bag next to her, saying that here it is. Chuck asked if it was any different from the blood of a living person. Maria sat in front of him and told him that there was some difference, freshness, taste, adding that his blood would be especially tasty, and that is why it seems so strange. The hero picked up, saying that it is similar to the difference between organic products and those treated with pesticides, right? Maria explained that it is like the difference between fresh meat and frozen. Chuck chewed his food and asked if this means that she is doomed to eat frozen meat for the rest of her days. Maria raised her finger and listened questioningly to what he thought. It would be okay if she drank fresh sometimes. The hero explained that it was his blood. The girl opened her mouth and screamed, asking what he was talking about. The guy smiled mockingly and said that he was regenerating anyway, so if he got tired of the bags, he could always find him. He asked if she wanted someone else. Maria, turning away, screamed that he shouldn't say such things, and she would refuse because she didn't want to burden him. The girl, hysterical, held out some dishes and screamed that in any case. Chuck looked closely and asked if it was blood. Maria explained that it could be nauseating and disgusting, but it would be very useful for his body. Vampire blood is considered one of the greatest magical ingredients. The hero grabbed the bottle and started drinking it. The girl noticed that it was very embarrassing that he was drinking it right in front of her. Notifications popped up that he had used a rank 2 life elixir, which had a special ingredient. His aura rank had been raised by 1 level, and the maximum volume had been increased by 500, and that 10 skill points had been distributed evenly. Maria wondered if it was delicious. The hero flared up with magic while sitting on the floor, and thought that it definitely wasn't, but he had definitely become stronger than in his past life. The guy smiled and said that it was cool, driving away in his head that now he needed to start the next scenario. Someone was moving their legs, walking. The girl was walking down the street. It was Emma, a direct descendant of the famous Arden family and a knight of the 2nd rank. It was said that this girl's life had changed a lot compared to the past. The girl clenched her fists. The plot was about how after she felt an insurmountable wall between her and the 5th rank knight she met at the hunting grounds, she realized that she needed to work harder and develop her skills. She looked down and giggled, smiling. Emma held candies in her hand and ate them with pleasure, talking about the many honey bombs. The plot explained that, of course, until recently. The girl was eagerly choosing which outfit to take, saying that she wanted to wear them all. It was said that Emma was lazy by nature, did not feel much anxiety about swordplay and lacked the desire to improve, because this girl was a terrible student with a genius talent who constantly gets unsatisfactory marks. The girl held the outfits in her hands and was happy, thinking about how here she didn't have to swing a sword 10,000 times a day, pass tests during basic exercises, or duel with sweaty and cruel fighting brothers and sisters, and most importantly, that she didn't have a sister here. Emma jumped around the store, talking about how much she enjoyed such moments. The guy looked at what was happening and asked about what kind. The girl turned around, recognizing Chuck in him. The hero crossed his arms and noted that she was not hanging out at training these days. Emma replied that she had so many things to do lately and tasks, and she also had to go on missions. The guy smiled, pointing at himself, and said that he knew something that would bring her a whole bunch of money, asked if she wanted to join the group. Emma asked the hero again. The girl clenched her fist and cried with anger, wondering why he continued to pursue her. The plot narrated that at some point it became difficult for Emma to be around Chuck. Scattered dresses and candies lay around the heroine. It was said that her lazy habit of trusting only her talent would easily be revealed to this man, and that very true face of a genius swordswoman who has a 2nd rank knight certificate and is the granddaughter of the Emperor of the Sword. Emma was thinking that first of all, this man's methods were too harsh, and he kept talking about the basics. The guy was standing behind her and talking about the basics. The girl looked ahead in horror and thought about whether it was normal at such an age to learn cool techniques. Chuck raised his finger up and said that there were 2 gold coins for 2 groups. The difficulty was rank 2. The girl opened her mouth and asked again about the 2 gold coins. She was thinking about how many clothes and honey bombs she could buy for such a lot of money. The hero smiled and asked if she wanted to go. Emma agreed. The guy said that it was great and explained that they were leaving in the middle of next week, reminding her not to forget to get ready. The girl replied that it was okay, she understood everything. The hero said that today he was planning to go on a short-term mission for 20 silver coins, and offered to do it together. A street with small houses was depicted. The heroine asked again about the coins and agreed. Chuck smirked and thought that she just needed the money. It was easy, and that would be enough for the script. The hero looked away and thought that he wasn't sure, but something was supposed to happen today. A town with a well was shown. The plot told that Emma always liked patrol missions. She just followed a certain route and checked if there were any problems. Scary monsters stuck out their tongues, and it was said that the monsters that approached the town were maximum 4th or 5th rank, although occasionally mid-level monsters appeared, but the likelihood of this was extremely small. Emma stood over the corpses of monsters and exclaimed that they were done with everything here, and he should take the claws and skin to sell them later. The plot told that there was not much to do there, but you can earn some money. Emma liked this business because it was easy, and besides. The armored guys ran up to her and exclaimed that she was simply amazing, noted that there were a dozen monsters there, but she instantly defeated them all. Emma closed her eyes and said that it was nonsense. The young men said that who else could say that an owlbear is nonsense. The girl smiled blissfully when she heard that nothing less was expected from a knight from the famous Arden family. The men looked down at her and discussed that her sister had already reached the highest level at this age, that they finally had an heir to the genius swordsman of the Arden family, that Libby Arden was the greatest genius of this generation and the second daughter in comparison to her. They said that she was an illegitimate child and her blood relationship with them was initially low. Emma waved her hand, smiling, and thought about how her family looked down on her, but she didn't think she was that bad. The hero pulled the spear out of the body and told her that there was an owlbear. The girl turned around, saying that she could easily deal with it. The guy remarked that it was amazing. The night sky. Emma said that the patrol was over and now, it was said that today was easy, fun and safe. Something glowed green in the sky. The plot told that some changes had not yet occurred. The character said that this was a signal from the previous patrol group. There was a nest of monsters of at least the 2nd rank. The girl replied that she did not see anything. The young man looked up and explained that the signal could only be seen with special glasses that they wear. It was like a secret code. He told everyone to move out. Emma cried because she couldn't leave work in time. The story told that some patrols can end without killing a single monster, but upon receiving a special signal, the patrolman is obliged to take part in the raid. The crowd of guys was happy that the granddaughter of a genius swordsman was with them. The hero smiled and said that he was right. The monster screamed. Looking up, it was told about a nest of 2nd rank monsters found by the previous patrol group, and it was a gathering of wolves around one Beowulf. It was said that they were talking about the monster that Emma defeated, even being poisoned. The monster was cut with several blows. It was said that this time they were able to win without much effort, but the girl prepared for a fight with the Black Rider. She looked at him in surprise, recognizing someone. In front of her was an evil spirit sitting on a horse. They were blazing with magic. It was a Dullahan monster of the 1st rank. Emma reached for her sword and wondered why it was there, thinking that she had no other choice. She pulled the weapon out of its holster. The girl swung it twice, using the Arden-style territory separation. Emma looked ahead questioningly. The monster was twisting from side to side. The girl wondered what kind of moves it had, if it was a mollusk. Emma screamed when it grabbed her, wrapping her in a claw. The Dullahan held her in front of him, and she thought that he was fast and experienced. After all, it was a 1st-rank monster, and so. Emma screamed in helplessness for Chuck to help her. It was about the warrior's pride, something that the girl lacked. The young men ran up and told her that he was fighting another monster. Emma screamed that why was he not there when he was so needed. She gritted her teeth as she looked at the bright light. The girl closed her eyes in fear. Skulls were flying around her. She lay tangled and moaning, next to the corpse of the monster. Emma raised her head and thanked for the help. She noticed the blood dripping from the blade and thought that she had seen this sword somewhere. She was told that she was still as weak, lazy and self-confident as before. Emma looked in front of her and the plot told about the eldest daughter of the Arden family and perhaps the future heir, the greatest swordswoman of our generation, who will continue the path of the Emperor of the Sword. In front of her stood the girl and she exclaimed about her sister. It was Libby Arden. The girl looked in front of her, and it was said that this was Emma's older sister. Libby asked her what state she was in. The girl sighed in confusion. The older sister looked at her and asked why she didn't retreat when she saw the Dullahan and didn't analyze her enemy properly, and most importantly. Libby noted that she stupidly drew her sword, wondering who she was so sloppily copying. Emma fell to her knees and began to apologize. The sister told her to stop, adding that the result of her actions was entirely her responsibility, and a few words did not end it. The guy extended his hand to the other, asking if he was okay. He answered that everything was fine. Libby stood next to her and said that her random actions endangered the soldiers who trusted and followed her. The girl said that she understood. The sister exclaimed about her shoulders. Emma straightened up, clenching her teeth. Libby held the sword on her shoulder and said that the swordsmen of the Arden family should always be confident in themselves. The girl, lowering her head, agreeing. The hero swung his spear and thought about being caught. Libby looked away. Chuck thought that he was keeping an eye on Emma, pretending to be busy. The hero approached the sister, and she spoke about her being a divine sword, the greatest disciple, and also the first master of the sword pavilion, Libby. The boy bowed and said that he was a disciple of the 8 trigrams spear, Chuck, a friend of Emma, and that he was glad to meet her. Libby looked closely and asked him again about what he said, that a friend. The hero thought that he knew what she wanted to say. He looked down and thought about how he could not reveal his skill with the spear, because there were only a few people who used this art. The characters of woman and man were shown, and it was said that besides him, there were only 2. Libby turned away and said it was okay if he didn't want to talk about it. The hero replied that they had dealt with all the monsters in the area. It was reported that the elite troops of the Arden family were made up of knights of the 2nd rank, also known as the 5 swords. 5 girls were depicted, embodying swords. Jenny asked if they should chase the scattered monsters. It was said that they were all the same rank as Emma or higher. The sister put her hands on her waist and said that there was no need to chase them, they needed to go back. The girls bowed their heads and said that they obeyed. Libby said that Emma was coming with them. The girl turned and looked with surprised eyes. Warriors with swords were depicted. The plot told about how swordsmen love to travel in groups. Those who are usually called the swordsman faction are partly a kind of gangster organization. An army of soldiers was shown. It was said that they follow their leaders, unite in groups and often consider themselves a clan. 60 years ago, the swordsman Garen began a new era of swordsmanship. The house was lit. It was the Arden family's Merkaba pavilion. It was said that when the current head of the family began to spread the idea of martial arts schools, the Arden swordsmen became a famous family of masters and representatives of the continent. The girl held out her pipe and asked for a light. Someone replied that he would do it now, calling her the pavilion master. The story spoke of the steadfast spirit of their unique command. Discipline and gangster tendencies still persist today. Libby smoked her pipe with her legs crossed and people sat in front of her with their heads bowed. The girl sat on her knees with her head bowed, talking about how she was a disciple of the main family and a 2nd-rank swordswoman, Emma, greeting the first pavilion master. The soldiers looked indignant. One of them wondered what was going on. Even if she was the greatest disciple of the main family, why was she forcing another disciple to kneel? Libby was looking at the paper and talking about patrol missions, protecting merchants, raiding 4th-tier monsters, saying it was absurd, wondering who the assistant at the cafe was. Emma was sitting on her knees and talking about how it was a mission where you have to wear a uniform and hand out flyers. Sister asked if her friend did that. She said it was her. Emma blushed, closing her eyes, and said she just thought the uniform was cute. Libby looked at her with a serious look, listening to how she was so cute. Sister exhaled smoke and said how pathetic Emma was. The girl's eyes widened, listening to how who would have thought that she would use her protector certificate, received as a favor, for something like this. Was she trying to tarnish the Arden family name? Emma remembered how the soldiers were happy to see her, listening to the question of whether she only encountered low-level monsters on all these missions, and whether she wanted to be known as a hero after completing such raids. The girl looked down intently. She remembered Garen Arden and chased away in her mind the fact that she could not escape her essence. Emma sat on her knees with her head bowed silently. The girl approached the carriage in the night forest. Behind Libby stood the girls, who discussed that the younger sister looked healthy, and it seemed that she had gained a little weight. The sister crossed her arms and clarified who knew that boy. The girls reasoned that the boy was Chuck. In her memories, he swung a spear. The lady said that he was only a 5th-rank knight. Libby smoked a pipe and said that it couldn't be. Was the Merkaba Academy ranking test really that unreliable? The hero was spinning in front of the monsters and it was said that his gaze was on Emma from the beginning to the end of the fight. The monsters did not occupy even 20% of his attention. And this is not just some experience, and not the level of his practice. It was a hunch and obsession that can only be achieved by honing your skills in real conditions. The sister looked in front of her and thought about his mastery of the spear, that at first glance it looked simple, but someone who has reached the heights of the Arden style can definitely see the truth. Chuck's silhouette with a spear was depicted. Libby smiled and thought that the meeting was short, but she was very pleased with his friend. If only this boy stayed next to her younger sister. She said that she received a request from the academy. Libby admired the night sky and said that she would definitely be able to see him. There was some food on the tablecloth and it was said that every time Maria, who was nicknamed the senior with the potatoes, came, she brought a lot of things. The girl said that it was potato pie. She added ground lamb inside and baked it, said to eat it when he was hungry. Chuck tilted his head and indicated that it was ground lamb. Maria smiled and asked if he got it, said that it was fresh meat that arrived this morning. Professor Eva asked her to help with the slaughter of cattle, so she practiced. The guy, trying the food, released tears. Closing his eyes, he chased in his head about how while she was living a sad life as a vampire, eating frozen meat, it was so delicious and he was touched. Maria was interested in whether it was delicious or not. She laughed, raising her finger up, said that next time she would bring beef, asking if he liked oxtails. Chuck looked at her and said that he liked it very much, thanking her. Maria exclaimed with a question, whether he meant oxtails. The girl blushed and said that next time she would try to bring them one way or another. She said that he had rather large hands, They were rough and covered with scars, the hands of a worker. They were so tough and manly. He held her hand when someone called out to her. Maria ran towards Isabel, waving her arms and asking if she had eaten. Isabel opened her mouth and said that she had just. The girl interrupted her, answering that she had not done anything, saying goodbye to Chuck. The guy chewed his food, looking after her, thinking about the fact that it seemed that he did not know something about children at this age. He looked at the set table and thought about how he never got a date in his past life because of Jack's interference. He could have a relationship, but one bastard ruined everything. Chuck wondered when he would have all this. There was a picture of the sky. The hero reasoned that his current platonic relationships were very different from the past. The guy read at the table, sitting with Kate, thinking about how sometimes Kate brings rare and precious mushrooms from the forest. Then they go to the library and begin their lessons on learning the Agam alphabet. The hero and Ethan sit on a pile of defeated wolves, and Chuck runs through his head that Ethan also comes to him quite often. For him, he is not really a friend, more like a useful colleague, and when there are difficult missions with good pay, he invites him to join. The children screamed in fear. He said that he usually hangs out with other students. Chuck gritted his teeth, turning around, asking what was wrong, if there was a monster there. The girl stood in front of him and talked about food and a promise. The hero looked at her and thought about how it was Laura. He supposed she was some kind of monster, but what did food and a promise mean? The guy remembered hanging upside down, claiming he would buy her something later, thinking about how it was a month ago and how good her memory was. The students ran away and the hero told them that he wouldn't be able to hang out with the two of them today. One of them, running away, said that he remembered that he hadn't done his assignment. There was a building under the scorching sun. Chuck said that she looked like a stray cat, so he decided to bring her here, asking if she liked fish. Laura put the fish in her mouth. The hero screamed, asking if she was crazy, and how strong her throat was. The girl watched him sadly. The guy said it was disrespectful to the food. She said you just need to chew and eat. The hero smirked, saying that soon she wouldn't be able to say that anymore. Chuck handed over the fish and rice and asked her how she liked it. It looked more appetizing now, didn't it? And instead of just eating, let her look at it with her own eyes and smell it. Laura watched attentively, listening to show respect for the food. The girl repeated about respect. Chuck leaned on his arm and watched her eat, asking her to eat even more slowly. The hero looked away and thought about how the weapons production was almost finished and a little early, but soon the second arc would begin. The building against the cloudy sky. It was about her entry. The guy shouted furiously about not studying at all. The plot was about midterm exams. Lewis hugged the book and asked Edward about the point of sweating 10 minutes before the exam, since he told him to study in advance. He noted that he should have scolded him more. Another student replied that he should have listened more. Edward asked Chuck if he had prepared. The hero laughed and said that he did not need to. They asked him what he was going to do. The guy grinned and ran it through his head, apologizing that he was different from them, and was taking this exam not for the first time, so let the first rank await him. The teacher announced to all the students that the exam was starting, and asked them to turn over the sheets of paper in front of them. Chuck smiled, looking at the sheet of paper, and announced that he was starting. Everything around the guy went dark as he read the problem. When he finished reading, the guy turned white. He was thinking that this was the end and what it meant. Edward stretched and asked if the exam was over. Lewis turned around and said that he knew it would happen to him, Edward, and asked Chuck. The hero said something about knights. The guy sat with a sheet of paper, his eyes closed, and talked about how it was enough to be able to write your name. He was told that his answer sheet was empty, and that even someone had 1 or 2 answers before falling asleep. The hero buried his face in his sheet of paper and thought that in his past life he had never studied, but only constantly studied expert skills, and not the knowledge of this world. Chuck squeezed the sheet of paper in anger and thought that everything was fine. What kind of written test was there? Because there were a lot of ways to fix everything. The crowd in the conference room was filled with shouts for the first years to brace themselves, and someone was shouting that he had spent money on his monthly accommodation. Chuck stood with his spear in his hands and thought about how the house exam was one of the easiest events in the game, and it was a golden chance to improve his grades from the written test. The hero looked ahead and thought about how such exams were conducted by professors from the night house or temporary instructors invited from outside. That 15 students on the team had to meet them and show their abilities, receiving an assessment from the professor. Chuck grinned angrily and thought about how, since he was originally a 5th-ranked knight, the level of the professor assigned to him would be low, and he would get an extra point if he could defeat the instructor, that he didn't know who the examiner would be. But he apologized in advance. He would win and close the show with the written exam. The guys jumped up from their seats asking questions. The hero wondered why they were reacting like that, who their instructor was. He crossed his arms when he heard whether he had chewed well. Libby stood in front of him and said that they had met again. Chuck looked at her in surprise and wondered why she was here. A large hall with people was shown and they were talking about the group practical exam of first-year students. They announced that they were to meet the guests specially invited to this test, the elite from the Arden family. The 5 swords were introduced. The girls stood looking around. They discussed that they would not try too hard, because they were just students. It was said to beware of the guy who controlled the swords, he was strong. The crowd ran towards them screaming. Ethan looked after them and reasoned that even though the 5 swords were of the second rank, they had him and Emma on their side. The guy was thinking about the chances of winning. The girls headed towards them. They prepared themselves using the ardent sword formation style, activating the 5 swords combination technique. The energy flew towards the students. They flew apart from the blow. Ethan watched as people screamed as they were blown away. He reasoned that the chances of winning were not that high. Against many enemies, the enemy first decided to block the view. Experience was visible. How they acted, relying on it. The guy raised his hand up and thought about being allowed to first provide a proper view. Milia from the 5 attacked him from behind. The young man deflected her attack with his hand, asking if they decided to act unexpectedly. Emma turned around and called out to Ethan when one of the 5 flew to attack. The girl managed to block Jenny's blow. Looking into her eyes, the attacker said that she was her opponent. Emma asked again if she was aiming at her. Jenny tripped her and said that there were about 15 students here, but 6 of them were more than enough. Emma flew screaming to the ground. The opponent noted that the young lady's position was unstable. Jenny slashed her sword near the girl's head. The spectators shouted in delight, which was expected from the 5 swords, the elite of the Arden family. The girls fought, hearing screams about how fast it was, and requests to do something. It was said that everyone was falling one after another, except for those 2. Emma and Ethan repelled the attacks, attacking with a large number of flying swords. It was reported that from the outside it seemed so, but the reality is completely different. Ethan extended his palm forward and summoned the sword of the fire spirit, a heavy iron sword. It was said that the experience of the boy resisted the 5 swordsmen. The story was about the dust clearing and Milia being defeated by the magic swords. She was flying down, noting that 2 against 5 was too much. It was said that Ethan would soon celebrate his victory. It was said that Emma was on the other side. The swords were sending sparks as the girls fought. Jenny was pressuring Emma, saying that she needed to practice more, wondering which of them was the contender for the right to inherit with such and such skills. The opponent in the fight pressed herself to Emma's face and said that in the current situation she should not even bother and graduate from the academy, because it would be better to drop everything and get a proper education at home. The girl forcefully repelled Jenny's onslaught and shouted that she was not going to do such a thing. Emma looked ahead and it was said about a watchful look and eyes open to inspect the territory. The heroine fell to her knees from the blow, and the adversary ran around and noted that it was worth staying focused until the very end. Emma thought that she still could not see anything. Jenny put her sword on her shoulder and said that she still had a long way to go. The plot said that this was true, because in the original everything was different. Libby looked at the heroes and was asked how it happened that she became an examiner. The sister waved her sword and said that it was time to begin, and that they could consider that they would gain experience in a battle with a great special rank. The heroes watched her. Questions were heard from the crowd, from misunderstanding. Great special rank. The monster in the form of a girl was shown, and it was said about a monster capable of dealing with an entire army alone, and a catastrophe that even dozens of guards could not cope with. The hero watched with a frown. The plot was about how most people would never encounter such a monster, and no one would believe it if they told about meeting him. The monster girl looked forward. It was said that it was a completely different story when it came to this girl. The older sister waved a weapon, and it was said that Libby was one of those who can face a special rank. She was a monster among monsters. The girl lifted everything around her into the air. Chuck watched as people flew apart, asking for help. He said to just look at this house. Edward panicked, screaming about how he was almost killed and asking a question about whether this examiner was too carried away, and why the hell she was fighting so seriously against the students. The hero sat to the side and answered that he gives a tooth. She still gives them a big break, although she could have finished everything in 10 seconds. Chuck was pointing and wondering what he was holding. The young man picked him up by the scruff of the neck and said that it was Lewis. He thought he would die if he left him there, so he took him with him. The hero assumed he was already passed out. Edward kept telling Chuck not to pass out because he wasn't sure he could carry something that heavy. The boy didn't have time to finish speaking before he was thrown forward by the explosion. The hero was screaming at him in a panic. Chuck turned his head when he heard Libby saying that they were all too weak to learn anything from her. He was hiding behind a barrier when the girl told him to come out since they were alone. The hero came out from behind the rock and raised his hands, asking if he could just give up. Libby replied that he should give up if he wanted a low grade, adding that he wouldn't do that. The girl looked down and spoke, because he would not want to miss a rare opportunity to fight against such a force. The guy smiled and thought about how even a kilometer away it would be clear who she was. The characters stood back to back. Chuck remembered that in a past life he and Libby were comrades and fought side by side countless times. The girl watched him train. The guy thought that the master taught him how to handle a spear, and Libby the first fighting techniques. But by the end of the past life he was not fit to hold a candle to her. The hero stood in a stance smiling and reasoned that this was a wall that he would have to break through someday. And considering that he was going to take the place of the player, he needed to become stronger than Libby Arden. The girl swung her sword and screamed when she saw the hero. The opponents met face to face with their swords crossed. Chuck blocked the examiner's blows again and again. He stabbed her with a spear, but she dodged. Libby attacked the hero, but he blocked the blow at his head. Magic shook everything around. From the swings of the girl's sword, the guy reflected the attacks. There was talk around about who this guy was, that he was a 5th rank knight. People wondered if a 5th rank freshman could actually hold his own against Libby. The guy gritted his teeth in tension. The onlookers wondered how that was possible. Chuck opened his mouth wide as he screamed. The hero leaned on his knees and sighed. The girl remarked that it was sad that he had run out of energy. Libby put away her sword in thought. The guy wondered if she had put away her sword. Did that mean that the work he had done was satisfactory? He looked at her carefully and realized that of course that was simply impossible. This was territory separation. It was said that it foreshadowed the mighty sword emperor's most powerful technique. The girl's eyes flashed with magic. She said that she would see how he would stand up to it, and asked him to show her a worthy response with his spear skill. Killing intent was activated. Waves of interference scattered around Libby. The hero watched with concern. The students opened their mouths in shock and wondered what was happening and if it was too dangerous. The teachers jumped up from their seats, and one of them, pointing a finger, shouted for her to stop, asking if she was trying to kill the student, talking about stopping the test. Sam looked surprised and shouted for everything to stop now. Ardent style, first slice was activated. The eye was split in half, false territory division was used. The plot told about the world freezing, but the ghostly reflection of Libby Arden continues its movement across the frozen world. The girl raised her weapon very slowly. The hero thought about how her sword moved as if in slow motion. The guy moved towards her, thinking about how he was pushing his spear at full speed against Libby's sword, which for him was like a transparent crystal. The spear froze in place. Chuck cursed, realizing that the spear was not moving, and that this world did not allow him to move. He clenched his teeth, looking at her, thinking that he was only allowing himself to watch his immobility. The hero remembered the battle with the red monster and thought that at the moment with Maria, everything was just a coincidence. The guy wondered if he was still able to control the territory. A thin beam of light flashed in his eye, and he understood that he had to make any, not necessarily a perfect one. When their blades approached each other slowly, he continued the thought that just one step forward. The blade of the spear turned red. The hero quickly looked at her. Their weapons met, creating a large blast wave. Clouds of dust and dirt flew up into the air. Sam and the others gaped in shock. Libby held the sharp blade of the sword in front of him and spoke of knowledge rather than instinct, of feeling omnipotent, as if he were the center of the world. The girl narrowed her eyes and declared that she had finally gotten her answer. The hero stood with his hand outstretched, hearing the territory. Libby declared that it was time to end. He stared silently at his cut spear and listened as the girl spoke of her advice to use a better spear, as his equipment was far inferior to his skill level. Libby glanced to the side. Her sister sat there shaking. She wondered about Emmy. The girl turned her head and said that the test was not particularly important, and noted that he had accepted the challenge by asking if he was trying to show the territory. Chuck smiled when he heard the question about what he also knew about Emmy's talent, thought about the fact that it was true, and that he had lost the battle, but achieved his goal. Libby looked at him and said that she had some work in the city, so she would stay for a while, let him not be impudent and not interfere, since his desire did not matter, because nothing would change. Chuck watched the leaving girl, who said that she would crush Emmy with her own hands. The guy's eyes were shining with anger. He thought about the fact that after today's show of the territory, he swears, nothing will go according to her plan. Chuck stands behind the girl and she says that he will crush Emma with his own hands. He smiles slyly and thinks that after today's show of the territory, he swears that nothing will go according to her plan. Someone states that as a result of the unanimous decision of the teachers, Chuck is awarded the highest marks and maximum bonus points for the practical test. People are indignant about why he has the highest marks against Emma, and he fought alone and who the hell he is. A man looks at him with displeasure, saying that it makes no sense, because how could he even stand up to her one-on-one? And another asks if he is really a 5th rank knight. Sam wonders about this student, because he is definitely the one who tried to catch spiritual bodies. Someone holds up sunglasses and thinks that it makes no sense, because how could he even? In the background, Oliver asks if he uses his techniques. In the background, the emblem, a voice narrates that a few days later, even before Emma gave him advice, he already felt the need for a better weapon. The pumped-up guy asks him who he is and that the academy without hesitation presents him with such precious and rare ingredients, and clarifies how he learned the secret techniques of his family. To which Chuck asks him not to worry about it, and thinks that he managed to do a lot in his past life. He is too lazy to explain such things to a person. He reaches out to something and says that the acquisition of such ingredients requires at least several hundred gold coins, and there are no players who want to pay for all this in cash, and usually everything needs to be created using the rewards that the player can get for completing stories and quests. Chuck looks at the man in shock and the voice continues that, however, He has special soul dust, a second-rank runestone and a first-rank silver stone at his disposal, as well as full support from the chairman. The guy looks at him with satisfaction and says that only a small number of excellent weapons can be created on the territory of the academy, and this is one of them. He sees a spear and a notification from the system that in front of him is a legendary class weapon, specifically a silver spear of a knight from the Kingdom of Shadows. The child watches in horror while someone notices that the blood has not stopped, and wonders why this happened because the wound was not fatal at all. Emma, against the backdrop of a corpse, remembers how she first got into a real battle, how she chopped up 5th-rank monsters there and grimaced when she watched the victim's guts fall out and the blood flow out. The girl fell off her feet, while she continues that the smell of human blood was very different from this one. Even when she first smelled it, she already understood everything. She looks at the weapon in horror and realizes what happened, while she remembers that the smell of human blood is a suffocating aroma. The girl sees her reflection in the bloody blade and continues that this aroma was the agony of a dying life. As an adult, she looks at herself in a clean blade. She closes her eyes and notes that she will have to work again today, while the system sends her a task. Emma notes that anything would be better than that urgent mission to find a bloodthirsty killer from a foggy city, which also required a bachelor's permit and a consultation with a professor, because she does not like dangerous things. Emma looks at her clothes, thinking about what was the main reason she chose a mission related to Beowulf's. She thinks about the silhouette of a man and wonders where her savior is now. Emma turns around when someone asks if the knight in front of him is a 5th-rank knight, and asks him to try as a porter. In the second, she is indignant that he has to pick up after the brats at such a young age. Chuck waves his hand at her and notes that the meeting is unexpected, to which she greets him in return. He looks around and a voice states that the reaction of the other participants is not very good because of the quota system. The Guardian Association is obliged to allow students to participate, but they probably did not expect a 5th rank like Chuck to appear. He shakes the girl's hands and remarks that it's a relief because Emma is with him. He rolls his eyes and thinks that they can't tell him anything in front of the Sword Emperor's granddaughter, and asks them to stop staring because they've probably burned a hole in the back of his head by now. He puts his hand on the girl's shoulder and asks her how her eyes are, to which she asks again, but immediately realizes and replies that everything is fine, to which he says that she should understand that he didn't ask about that. Emma asks if his sister told him about this, to which he replies positively and thinks that of course her sister didn't tell him anything. The girl looks away sadly while he remarks that she should hurry because her sister is serious, and she really plans to crush her so much that she won't even be able to lift a sword. Emma looks forward and replies that she can simply stop wielding a sword when that happens. He looks into the distance and realizes that he is not sure she will ever do such a thing. Against the background of the forest, someone says that there were several creatures in the nest and about 20 low-growing hounds. Emma looks into the box and says that the capture group skillfully handled the hounds and they even hunted Beowulf. But gradually the situation took a strange turn. The creatures become aggressive while someone asks what is happening and why there are so many of them around and where they are coming from and what kind of fog is this. The knight asks his colleague where that 5th-rank boy is, to which he receives in response that he does not know and that now is not the time to worry about such things. While the hounds are being killed by someone, the knights note that they are lucky that Lady Emma is doing well. Against the background of the hounds, screams are heard from where they are all coming from and that monsters and ghosts have mixed into one whole, and there should not be so many evil spirits here at all. Emma turns around gloomily, thinking that usually evil spirits are not attracted to places where there are few people, and it seems to be artificially created. There is a black silhouette behind her. She blocks his blow, he asks to save him, and she understands that he is very heavy, therefore this is not a sign, but a real knight. The girl goes on the attack asking why he is attacking them and simply retreats, because she will cut him if he attacks again. Emma turns around to face the second attacker. She flies chest first from a blow to the back. The knight swings at her again. She looks at him in horror. The fair-haired girl is scared. Emma makes 2 precise diagonal cuts. Splashes of someone's blood pass near her head. The knight falls apart right in front of her, and she asks what it is. She looks into a pool of blood and notices that however the smell of human blood is different, and this suffocating aroma was the agony of a dying life. Emma is horrified and realizes that she killed him. The knight attacks from behind. Someone hits him right in the skull and asks why she's just sitting there. Chuck sullenly holds the weapon, saying that these aren't people, and she doesn't understand what Chuck is doing here. The girl asks what he's telling her and asks again if these are people, to which he notes that she's right and that these are ordinary corpses raised with the help of dark magic. He holds the opponent's head while someone thinks that the main event of the opening act of the second arc is the subjugation of the bloodthirsty killer from the foggy city. The guy turns around and continues that in the original, the player's group is pursuing the maniac that Maria missed at the end of the first arc, but if you choose the mission to catch the Beowulfs instead, then during it the player meets the bloodthirsty killer and can fight him. The knights ask Emma if she's okay, to which she draws their attention to something ahead of her. The creature in the cloak shines an eye, to which someone asks in horror what it is. The girl wants to attack, to which Chuck replies that everything is fine and she should prepare to run away, to which she is indignant. Chuck looks at the creature and uses the 6-step technique, specifically the 5th step from there, the mountain throw. The entity in the cloak flew into a tree. Someone shouts that everything happened as expected from Chuck, that he is incredible, and he himself notes that the ghost died in one blow, therefore he is very weak. Chuck looks ahead and thinks that it is obvious that this is not so, because if he dies here, then this is definitely not the boss of the second arc and that based on the characteristics of this creature, he alone will not cope with it. The cloaked creature glows its eye and states that it is impressive that he was able to destroy his doll and that they will finish today and he looks forward to meeting them in the near future, while Chuck realizes that the problem is not in the power or synergy, but in its feature, such as stealth. The creature glows while someone asks what it is and what kind of fog. Chuck frowns and realizes that a crimson haze was used. This is when the health indicator of the undead mage of the source of the fog reaches 0, then the fog of death automatically appears. The skull of the creature emits a red fog, and he continues that what he destroyed was just a doll and a device that created the fog, that it is just undead who used the corpse of the mage. It glows more intensely under the comment that the real killer will be difficult to catch, because he uses such dolls that help to avoid surveillance, and it is impossible to find who really controls the fog. Chuck runs ahead of everyone and shouts that everyone should follow his example, because don't they think that this fog is dangerous? Someone notices Chuck's spear and asks him if it's okay for him to leave it here, because it's probably expensive, to which he notes that everything is fine. Chuck uses the return rune. The spear flies out of the tree on its own. Emma is stunned that it flew right into his hand, to which he notes that he can just return it like that, while someone admires such an incredible trick. Both turn around at the sound. Charlie is horrified and indignant that he tripped over a root. Chuck and Emma run to him. She asks him to grab her hand, and he thanks her and then asks her to dodge. Emma is perplexed. The girl attacks with a roundhouse, while Chuck notes that this pisses him off. The guy gets angry and yells at Charlie to get up and run and just forget about it and get out of the forest and give him his cape. The guy goes on the attack. Chuck grins and notes that he didn't think he'd do it twice because in his past life he tripped and got caught in the fog himself. Chuck covers his face from the fog and remembers that back then his condition became critical in less than a minute. Now he has the ability to regenerate, so he'll last longer. He remembers the girl and notes that the main problem is her while she's screaming for the monster to get out because she already told him to fuck off. Chuck looks at her and notes that it must be that the blood has been almost completely sucked out of her body, and he assumes that she won't last long. Emma is tied up in a red vice and thinks that all she needs to do to free herself is to cut the red things. The girl is shaking and doesn't understand why she can't cut them because she's not strong enough for it or her position is too bad. The girl is weakening and doesn't understand why. Libby looks at her with displeasure and asks her what condition she's in. Her sword fell to the ground. Emma looks sadly and understands that everything happened because she is weak. The girl's body falls down, while she continues that she is very sorry, because she really wanted to become strong and save someone too. She remembers her savior and thinks that she wanted to become a respected and reliable person in his eyes. She responds to someone's cry. Chuck flies to her rescue. Emma opens her eyes and recognizes the voice. The silhouette is standing in front of her. She looks at him from behind. Chuck reaches out to her, while she realizes that this is the voice of her savior. The guy holds her by the shoulder and asks if she is okay, to which she recognizes who he is. She cannot open both eyes and notes that she will not be able to move from the spot and asks to save her, despite the fact that it seems to her that she will die even like that. Chuck covers her with a cloak and asks her to calm down. He intercepts her hands, saying that random blows will not help here, so she should concentrate and chop properly, to which she does not understand him. The undead are heading towards them and he adds that from now on he will protect her from them and clarifies whether she knows what to do. Emma cries, saying that she does not understand what he wants and that she will not be able to do it due to lack of strength, and that she is dizzy and injured because of the fog, to which he tries to convince her that she can. Chuck looks at her face and continues that among all the swordsmen he knows, she has a noticeable talent, and if she decides to do this, then she will succeed, because she only needs to take one step. The brunette smiles and says that one step will be enough for her. Emma looks at him, stunned. Chuck goes to attack the undead and shouts that he thanks her in advance. The girl stood up, thinking that she will not be able to hold out here for long, and does not understand how a guy with a lower aura rank can cope so easily. Emma grits her teeth and notes that she needs to do as Chuck told her. She reaches for her sheath and notices that she has no choice but to do it now. There are many red hands around her, while she thinks that her grandfather's secret technique that can cut anything will help her, but only to master it she must awaken. She concentrates and uses the eyes of the boundary, despite the fact that it is a cursed ability, but it allows you to forcibly see other people's territories. Emma frowns and continues about falling tears, dripping blood and even overwhelming emotions. All this becomes energy for this one step towards the frozen world. The girl takes a step and remembers Chuck's words that in this situation, just one step will be enough. The girl uses her family's style, the first sword style of her family. The undead were all cut up at once. Chuck watches in shock as she uses her area expansion on the undead. The undead are indignant as she saw it. There are blood spatters and cut down trees all around. Emma stands in a fighting stance as someone yells that the fog has cleared and asks if she is okay and what happened. They look at the head and notice that it is the killer from the foggy city. The guys are indignant that the forest was cut in half and ask how a person could do such a thing, and the second one notes that he has heard of something like this and realizes that this is what the famous Emperor Sword technique looks like. Chuck watches in shock and realizes that he thought she was using the third form of one cut or iron wave, but she can already do such things. Emma happily looks at him and notes that she did it, and she really did it, and he thinks that this is not true and she should stop because she should not be doing this yet. The guy is surprised to hear how the first one asks if she will be the next head of her family, and the second one gives a positive answer, because since no one except the Emperor himself is able to use the division of territory, and now she can. They shout that Emma is the future of her family and that she is the next heir. Chuck is horrified at his plans and does not understand why they are constantly twisted like this. An article about the death of the killer from the foggy city appeared in the newspaper with the news, an article about Emma, about her family, about the inheritance of the throne in her family, the question of whether the heir will change. The girl tears these newspapers with displeasure. She hands it to another and asks to get rid of it. The brunette looks into the mug with displeasure. Against the background of the blonde, she continues that the well-known family of swordsmen carries out activities within the sword faction and acts according to the logic of power, and under the overwhelming charisma of Herman they were waiting for the arrival of the sword, who will become his heir. Against the backdrop of the sword emperor, the voice continues that the division of territory exists depending on the stage of the path of the heart, in an area unknown to most in the world of martial arts, and the head of the family himself has long waited for the moment when the one who will continue his path will appear. Libby is tired from training, while the voice says that she trained and spent a lot of blood and sweat, and the calluses on her hands are evidence of the life she leads. But even she, who is called the genius of her generation, could not satisfy the sword emperor. The sisters participate in sparring. Emma, horrified, tries to catch her breath, while the story is about her younger sister, who only once held a sword against her sister in a friendly duel, and that she is generally an illegitimate child of the head of the family, whom he brought from outside. Libby angrily attacks and notes that she never considered this girl her rival. She knocks the weapon out of her opponent's hands. The sword is reflected in her sister's eyes. Libby is perplexed. Blood splashes in different directions. Someone screams that the bleeding won't stop, and someone asks if it was a fatal wound. Libby bleeds out in horror, saying that she didn't see it. Emma attacks and points out that she couldn't have seen it because when she came to, she was already cut. She stands alone while the voice says that it wasn't about speed, but something else, territory. Libby holds her wound while the voice comments that territory is the deepest path of martial arts, and Emma took a step into that space. Libby looks up and doesn't understand how this even happened, because she is a very small and lazy child. The girl is shocked while the voice talks about it. Emma stands with the sword and asks her to wait until she finally understands what her grandfather was telling her. She looks at her sister and continues that the twisted nature that mortals cannot understand is a demon's sword or a demon talent. The Emperor of the Sword places his hand on her head, saying that he also appoints her as a candidate for the successor, and the voice says that Emma has overcome everyone's denial and become the main candidate for the successor. Emma looks at Libby, saying that she is holding a sword for the first time, and her sister thinks that the memories of stroking are the question of her half-sister, who grew up under the complete neglect of her father. The older sister looks sadly and understands that these memories remain somewhere far away. Someone calls out to her. The girl asks if everything is okay with her, and she asks herself why they are worried about her. Libby gets up from her chair and asks them not to worry with thoughts that she also wanted her sister to enter the territory. She remembers her sister, and continues that if she saw this sword again, then maybe she would be able to reach there. The brunette gives the order to prepare a test of the sword. The plot moves to a building with a tower while someone asks when she will recover, to which he receives in response that she was not told, but if he uses potions, he will be a cucumber in a day or two. Chuck stands next to her bed while she asks if he wants a honey bomb, to which he asks again about the candy and notices her carelessness. The brunette looks thoughtfully and asks about dividing the territory, how she was able to do it, because even if she can see the territories with the eyes of the border, this does not mean that she will be able to use this technique right away. The girl is embarrassed and replies that he believed that she would succeed. Chuck tensely hears that she understands that if she tries, she can do anything, to which he himself replies that she really is a genius who ignores any effort. Someone knocks on the door, saying that he also wants to visit her. Maria shouts that it is her and asks if Chuck is okay. Chuck realizes that it is a senior named Maria, to which she greets him and says that she is a second-year student in the magic department, and Emma says that she is a first-year student in the night department. The brunette points at her and asks if she came to visit her, to which she receives a positive answer. His finger is almost on her face, and she notes that she was worried about him. Maria angrily asks if they are close, to which the guy asks again what the question was about and that her sudden behavior scares her. Someone is knocking on the window. The girl leans down and asks for food, specifically raw fish. Chuck looks at Maria and notes that she is uncomfortable because of Laura, although he can understand that everyone would find such behavior unpleasant, even if it were not Laura. The blue-haired girl asks again about the food, whether he ate with her, and he thinks that perhaps she is uncomfortable because of this. Chuck asks her with a smile not to worry, because he will not prepare a wonderful meal for her either, to which she did not understand. The guy rubs his chin and thinks that this is an unexpected gathering of incredibly star participants, and with such people you can do a lot. Chuck turns to Emma and says that since rumors about her division of territory have spread, Libby will most likely come soon with a sword test and asks if she is confident in herself, to which she asks again about the test itself. The voice explains that the sword test is a tradition of swordsmen, which was used by a 5th-level master and was intended to test the master of the sword pavilion, who is responsible for the family faction. Such was the description itself, but a lot of time has passed since then and the test is now used to legally get rid of competitors. The girl cries and notes that if she fights her sister, she will die, and notes that she is not sure, because to begin with, she cannot even beat 5 swords. Chuck looks ahead and says that he has a good method, to which she asks which one, to which he offers to tell her under one condition. Nevertheless, she unconditionally agrees. The guy closes his eyes and says that if he ever goes to deal with monsters or train in the gym from now on, she will have to go without complaint and thus essentially become a permanent member of his group. The girls are perplexed while she swears allegiance to him and asks for help, and he agrees and takes her loyalty as a vow. Chuck covers his face with his hands and says that he is like Chuck through the hardships of this time. The girl walks down the street, and he continues that he is with all the truths that he called through his body throughout his life. Someone throws a spear right in front of her face. Someone walks towards her while she asks who he is. The man looks at her and replies that he is her rival. Laura holds a knife while she recognizes her as Laura, while she replies that she is a master of the knife style. The girl reaches for the weapon and is perplexed about the knife style, asking why she is acting like this. Laura calmly looks and explains that someone told her that he would buy her sushi if she caught it. There is a battle against the moon. Brunette Ka blocks the blows, asking what it means, because what is he doing? Chuck says that he is a master of the Guan Dao style and says that he needs to strike before he is struck. He goes on the attack with crazy eyes and asks permission to study with an outstanding master of the wave sword, because this is the truth of life. Chuck smiles until his entire squad appears, including him. Laura with knives, that she is a master of the knife style. Ethan frowns and notes that he is a master of the flying sword style. Maria cries and it is stated that she is a master of alchemical magic. Emma attacks with a sword while she is stated as the main master. All 5 of them defeated the Emma family squad, the 5 swords. The girl with the bun asks why he did it. Chuck looks at her contentedly, and notes that this is so that they can get followers and this will not prevent them from raising their status. Chuck looks at the newspapers about their squad and explains that they are currently just adhering to an offensive attack. In the background, Herman, someone says that in the orders of their family there is a process called the test of the sword, and this is the so-called exam to choose the head of the clan, who answers all the questions, but everyone understands that this is just a legal option to get rid of a competitor. Chuck crossed his fingers while the voice notes that he proclaimed that he would change the order. In the wake of the defeat of the 5 swords, he decided to create his own dojo, and the trial by combat and subsequent victory of the newcomers over the 5 swords says something. The sisters prepare for sparring, while the voice notes that in the end, all this was for the sake of the duel between Emma and Libby. Emma turns around and notes that if she wins, she will officially declare it, because her sister's power will not be able to affect her for some time, the registration fee, buying an abandoned dojo and hiring Mr. Ethan and everything else. The younger one gives a thumbs up and continues that all of the above easily fell on Maria's shoulders, and if she later receives a reward for the killer from the Foggy City, she will be able to repay her for everything, probably. Libby looks at her and notes that an interesting situation has arisen. The brunette angrily says that her sister is stupid and if she wanted to run away, she should have done it as soon as she saw her, and suggests that the upcoming duel was not her idea either, while Emma is scared by her menace. Libby notes that judging by her reaction, she can tell that this is all the work of her comrade, to which he reminds that Emma wanted to tell her something. Emma looks down and wonders if she can even win and calls her sister by her official nickname. Libby looks on with displeasure, while the younger one thinks about her older sister and says that she is the new martial artist of their family, and asks to have a friendly sparring with her. The brunette closes her eyes and agrees to a friendly sparring and clarifies one thing with her. Emma frowns, while she clarifies that training swords and any methods of treatment, except for emergency ones, will be prohibited, to which she replies that she knows it. As the sisters' battle begins, A voice says that their family's supreme style master Libby and second-rank swordswoman Emma are standing opposite each other, and it's finally time to put an end to the sisters' feud. Maria frowns and thinks that her older sister is so strong that even if she turns into a vampire and uses all her power, she is not sure she can defeat her. The blue-haired girl asks if she will be okay, to which Chuck replies that he believes she can handle it. Maria smiles and replies that it is good. If she thinks so, then it will be so, while the system notifies that Maria's trust level in Chuck is at its maximum and remains unchanged. Libby hands him something. Chuck catches the bag and asks what it is, because even for the renovation of the hall there is too much, to which she gives a negative answer. She goes on the attack, saying that it is for a complete reconstruction. Emma grits her teeth and blocks the attack. A wall flies away behind Chuck. He and Maria are taken aback by the fact that she sawed off half of the building with one blow. The sisters look at each other. Emma closes her eyes and thinks that she has always admired her sister, and when she still had a passion for swords, her sister was her idol. She remembers how people came into the hall and said that Libby returned after defeating a first-rank monster, a minotaur, that she was only 15, and she had already achieved such success, and that even the Sword Emperor himself expressed his respect to her, and she thinks that her sister was like a hero from a fairy tale, a hero like their Sword Emperor, whom she had heard about since she was young. While she herself was a child whose mother died in childbirth, and whose father considered his daughter a shame born of his own mistakes. Little Emma greets her sister and congratulates her on her victory. Libby pats her head, telling her that she has grown up. Emma remembers the man in the pool of blood, the day she first pointed her sword at a man. The girl bursts into tears and realizes that everything changed then. Libby attacks sullenly. Emma opens her eyes and thinks that she should first step back, then to the side. The older one looks at her stunned and realizes that she is using a reverse defense. The younger one strikes, thinking that everything is textbook, because even though she can boast only a standard level of skill, she clearly could not expect such a lunge. The older one counterattacks. Emma tries to slow down, to which the second one notes that her legs are still just as fast. Emma frowns and thinks that she needs to maintain her speed, then get out of her line of sight and strike at the shortest distance from her. The girl disappears. Libby senses her behind her, while she uses a forward thrust, third form, thunder. The older one turns around. She almost left her sister without a nose. Emma lets out a battle cry. Libby doesn't understand what's going on. The younger one goes to hug her, and the older one realizes that the fight has gone hand to hand. The brunette knocks her down. She calls her sister by name, and goes on the attack. Libby kicks her and calls her an idiot. The brunette swings and asks if she thought she could defeat her with simple tricks. The sister blocks the blow. The younger one uses the older one's technique against her. She looks at the sword and notes that everything is going as Chuck said, then she does too. Emma uses a combination strike. Libby frowns and says that she was able to carry out such a counterattack right from her knees, and she clearly shows her that she does not want to lose with such tricks. The older one kicks again, screaming that her skill is still not enough. Emma grits her teeth. Libby goes on the attack from above. The younger one blocks. The blonde counterattacks. The brunette blocks. Emma lets out a battle cry, while the second one realizes that she is getting closer and closer to her. Libby sees the light in her eyes and realizes that this is not the case, and that she is now looking straight at her target. The brunette recognizes this moment with a smile. The older one looks at her sister and notes that this is exactly how she wanted to see her, her true nature, which she so diligently denied despite her talent. Emma tries to catch her breath. She looks at her sister with displeasure. Libby looks back and thinks that she realized that the key to victory is just one single blow, and not the sum of 10, and she accepts her challenge. The brunette prepares an attack and urges her sister to follow her example. Emma frowns. The sisters run at each other, while one thinks that the other has been chasing her all this time. The brunette strikes and remembers her sister's cry that today was her first lesson with the sword. Little Emma smiles and says that someday she wants to be an outstanding swordsman like her. Emma attacks with the support of Chuck. Libby is taken aback. Their blades met. A bright flash. The division of the territory passed along the entire body of the sister. Maria is horrified by what is happening. She asks in surprise if this is the end. Chuck sees a standing man and notices who is the winner in the fight. He looks at the silhouette. Libby dropped the sword. Maria joyfully shouts that Emma won. Chuck smiles and thinks that the only strong point of the younger in comparison with the elder is her division of the territory, and, accordingly, victory or defeat in this fight should be determined only in the use of this technique, and therefore he ordered her to only dodge, run away, and stall for time. Chuck remembers himself in a past life and notes that he managed to study her habits, behavior patterns, and so on there, in order to win the only victory in the battle. He looks at the brunette and thinks that everything happened as he thought, that during the battle only one thing was cut. This is the enemy's sword. Emma looks at herself and does not believe that she defeated her sister. Libby gets up and asks herself what she lacked, maybe tempering. She stands up and continues that from now on neither she nor her subordinates will interfere in their affairs, to which Emma asks her to stop. The younger sister asks her to wait. Chuck points out that she must be scared, because she was weaker in every way and defeated her family's top sword master. The sisters stand and stare, until he realizes that considering the level of judgment the older one will face after this, the younger one's fear of her reaction to turning away from her is natural. Libby frowns over her shoulder. She reaches out to her. Emma is stunned, until Chuck says that all her fears were in vain. Chuck remembers how he met Libby in his past life, that it happened much earlier than the incident with Maria. Then he was very surprised by such a deviation from the script. He remembers that then she was looking for the bastard who took her sister's life. But these searches were unsuccessful, because Jack killed them. Chuck remembers Libby at his sister's grave and notes that on the 3rd anniversary of Emma's death, he had a chance to talk to the brunette, who was still looking for the culprit, and then he told her that she comes there every anniversary to read a prayer. The brunette looks after her with the words that he previously thought that she did not like her younger sister, to which she answered that he was right. Chuck hears that she considered her a lazy and frivolous bore, but there is one but. Libby looks at the grave with the words that except her, there is no one who could free her from bitterness and resentment. The brunette smiles and the guy understands that the older one will never turn away from her, even if the latter gets around her, the older one will smile secretly and root for her. Libby strokes her sister's head and says that she has grown so much. Chuck crossed his arms over his chest and understands that the brunette he remembers is exactly like that. Emma is crying. The system notifies that Libby has lost and that Emma gets an average or a rank, a boost to mana, points and an understanding of the territory. Against the background of the building, someone says that he is afraid of battles, and the second one notes that he knows this, while the first one adds that despite this, there are still moments when he smiles during the battle, but that is why she always avoided battles. Emma looks down and continues that she thinks that this is not her, because she was afraid to face her sister and therefore did not take everything as seriously as others and looked for only easy ways, to which the guy notes that everyone does that. She is sad, saying that she won the battle and will now be perceived as the successor of the family. They will also keep her sister and her followers, but running away from it like this. Emma hugs her knees and says that she understands that her connection with her sister will really be broken, to which she receives a negative answer. Chuck looks at the apple and says that their connection will not be broken. The brunette continues to clean and answers that he assumes that they will distance themselves a little and the relationship between them can become awkward. However, a connection is not something that can be broken so easily. Emma listens that no matter what, they are still sisters. Chuck remembers that as a child, someone called him a good boy and explains that as a child, all he did was get hit on the head by bullies. He remembers himself saying that it was not this that tormented him, but the fact that he never dared to fight back, and for this he was terribly angry at himself. Emma gapes as he continues that she is a much stronger person than he was at the time, and he wants her to always be confident. Chuck looks at her, as she calls him a strange man. Emma looks at him and says that they are the same age and she does not understand why he acts as if he is older, to which he asks again if he seems older than his years, to which he receives in response that he is much older, something like maturity after going through all the difficulties that comes from him. And he himself thinks that this is all because he has lived 14 years more than she and is at least in his 30s. And if you take into account the character's own memories, then he is already well over 50. Emma thanks him with a smile, to which he does not understand why. She stretches and explains that she thanks him for that time and for what happened in the forest. The girl remembers the act of rescue and notes that it was he who saved her then in the forest. Chuck asks how she knew, to which she replies that it was by her voice, waist, and a little bit of intuition, to which he notes that he didn't expect such a display of intelligence from her. Chuck crosses his arms over his chest and says that since she already knew everything, she should forget about it, to which she retorts that she owes him a huge debt and if he wants something, he should just tell her. Chuck extends his hand and asks her to be his friend. The guy clarifies what's wrong, maybe she doesn't want to which she was confused, but shook his hand saying that she hasn't had a boyfriend yet, so she thinks it would be great to have a boyfriend, that is, a boyfriend's friend. Chuck smiles and hopes that they will get along. Emma looks embarrassed and replies that she is also glad that she has such a reliable friend like him. Chuck remembers what happened and thinks about punishment for villains and a bright future for good people. Libby strokes her sister's head. Chuck looks at the apples and thinks that he hopes this child will have a better choice. Candles are smoldering on the chandelier. Isabel looks out from behind the wall, says hello and notes that she has recently had something to think about. She calls out to Maria. The guy hands her a vial of blood and asks her to accept it, or rather his feelings. He hands her his blood. Isabel looks with disgust while he continues that if she wants, she can, to which she receives in response that everything is fine and that she regularly receives packages from the professor, and her friend notes that his words will put Maria in an awkward position, because such things happen every day, so it does not matter, but something worries her. Chuck calls up to her and says that classes are over. The blue-haired girl turned around embarrassedly. She looks at Chuck and Isabel thinks that he is Chuck who has been hanging around her friend a lot lately. He is a knight of the 5th rank, but it does not matter. The girl with glasses looks after them and notices that this guy fights on par with Emma, which means that he is special, so it worries her. Maria sheepishly takes the blood offered to her. Someone hits his head on the door. Isabel realizes that they closed the door, eavesdrops and asks what they are doing there together. Chuck remembered that he had previously offered her something and asks if she thought about it, and she does not understand what kind of offer. Chuck sits and continues that this land, which he bought the last time he registered his seal, since everything was destroyed, then for now there is a restructuring. He is going to build a hotel, to which she asks again and receives a positive answer with an explanation that why shouldn't she invest in his project, because the profit is guaranteed to triple, he is sure of it. Isabel sullenly hears the words about investments and profit and is perplexed by the fact that he is trying to do business with Maria and asks who he is. The plot moves to the training room, where Emma asks if they also have training today, to which she receives the answer that it is basic physical training. Isabel peeks while Emma notes that he is diligent, and he replies that the basics are important in everything. The girl with a smile declares that she will also go with him, and Isabel wonders who this is, and then realizes that it is the second daughter of a family of swordsmen. Chuck holds out a card saying that she has tried a lot of things, and they say that the food there is delicious, to which she recognizes the Holy Panda, the best restaurant. Isabel is perplexed by the restaurant, because this place is the best for dates, and this freak just flirted with her friend. She raises her hand. Emma turns around and asks if he heard anything, to which he receives a negative answer and asks how much money she has saved. Isabel crawls on the floor and is angry that he is trying to seduce 2 girls at the same time, and even starts talking about money. The plot moves to the next day on the restaurant street. Chuck asks if the sushi is tasty, to which he receives a positive answer. The guy clarifies if she has money, because there is a good option for investment, while the bespectacled girl gets angry and finishes her thoughts. She frowns and realizes that he is an incredible swindler. The car drives along the road, while someone clarifies that the costs of corporate registration, dojo renovation costs, hiring instructors for mercenaries, tax processing, etc. In the battle with Libby he spent 97 gold, and in Korean won it will be about 100 million won. Security stands near the car, and Chuck continues that all this was covered by the vampire, for which he should be grateful, because he never thought that he could be lent 100 gold, and where do wizards get so much money? He remembers Libby that she gave him 50 gold to build a new dojo. Chuck thinks about the killer from the Foggy City, that he and Emma also got a reward, and together it would amount to 109 gold coins, and what surprised him was that Laura also had a lot of money. He thinks about Ethan and the others. The first one had a huge fortune. Chuck sits. A bird flew by, while Chuck says that so he collected 550 gold coins and with them he bought land and now it is a plot on the outskirts of the city, in the wilderness. But in the second semester there will be a festival of friendly exchange with the Academy of the Eastern Continent, and this is the peak season for the hotel business. Tourists from all over the continent flock there, and he will receive hundreds of gold coins and will be able to get everything back in 2 weeks. Chuck flashes his teeth and continues that he is a time traveler from another world, and that this is how he should use information about the future. Chuck in dark glasses suggests that they just wait, and then he will take possession of all the money in this world. The plot moves to a carved building. The blonde man says that the position of the Catholic Church, the royal family, the magic tower, and the association in relation to their academy is not particularly pleasing. Kevin stands up and says that he does not think that this is an unsolvable problem, to which the man in the hat replies that the council supports his actions, and she believes that everyone should be given a chance. Kevin looks at her and notes that he will not be there for some time, to which he receives in response that she can do it instead of him, and the chairman of the academy retorts that in other places he would still give in to her, but isn't the Catholic Church an unpleasant place for her? The academy chairman leaves, saying that she should take care of everything while he is gone, and if something happens, she can use the emergency communication, to which she asks him to be careful. The girl adjusts her glasses. The man in the hat reads a document about experiments on the regenerative power of a vampire, which are prohibited, and a permit for the construction of a 3rd dormitory is under consideration. She reads the papers and wonders what comes next. The woman in the hat reads with displeasure, and asks what Chuck is up to again. Frowning, the girl asked what he is up to again. Holding an application for land for collecting mandrake, she asked again. A view opened up to the west of the academy, and she heard that mandrake was being collected in such a place. Crouching down, the hero asked her what she knew about the mandrake, to which the girl replied that well, it screams loudly when it gets out of the ground, to which he said that everything is correct, so you need to be careful not to damage your eardrums, good ear protection is a must, and it is better to have an open space around. Grinning, the protagonist asked if she was ready, to which Emma replied that she was ready. Chuck held the plant in his hands. An idea came to mind that the mandrake cannot be collected alone. You need a person who will hold the flower and pull it out with the roots, as well as an assistant who will cut off the roots and stems. If you do not cut them, The mandrake will continue to scream. This is the 4th time he himself collects the mandrake, the last time they collaborated with Jack. Lowering his head, the hero said that he is a little nervous, to which the girl asked what he said. The protagonist's eyes lit up and he screamed. Whatever. The monster made a sound. Chuck lifted the plant up. He looked away and screamed. Now let her show him her sword skills. The girl looked at him in amazement, thinking that this fool hadn't put on her headphones properly. The protagonist's eyes lit up and he thought, damn, since that's how it turned out, he'll try to cope alone, thinking that he's the only one who can scream. The protagonist smiled widely. The plant flew up. Chuck raised his hand up. The stem fell off the mandrake. The protagonist frowned. He turned around and screamed. Let her get up, he brought her with him, and there was no use. To which Emma asked if he'd gotten enough sleep. The protagonist looked away and thought that he was going to end it today, but it seemed like she was going to faint again. Chuck turned around, hearing the greeting, to which he thought that there should have been signs saying no entry, so who dared? The girl smirked, and he asked that she hadn't been told that an experiment would be conducted here today. A view of the building opened up. It was heard that it was so noisy that she jumped out to look. An open window appeared. The thought occurred to her that she jumped from there. After all, this is the 12th floor. The girl closed her eyes. Putting her hands behind her back, she asked what they were doing here together, to which the hero replied that he had told her last time that he was going to organize the collection of mandrakes. Rushing forward, Maria asked what the others were also going to pull out, to which the protagonist replied that yes, but since his comrade was injured, he plans to collect mandrakes another time. Chuck looked at her in surprise, hearing that she would just do it, to which he said that he should wait. It would be difficult to do if he was not a knight. Holding the plant in her hands, the girl said that the color was so unusual, silver, to which the hero thought that he was too late. She had already pulled it out. If you hear the cry of a silver mandrake without any protection, you can lose your life. The plant looked forward. Grinning, Maria said that she has a mandrake farm at home. She pulls out about 30 of these a year, and then asked how he liked it. It was easier than he thought, really. Standing in front of the plant, she added that they were going to make a decoction, then she could make a stew. While she waited, she would get food. It would be good if she found rabbit meat and potatoes. Looking down, the hero asked what he should do, to which he was told that he could do nothing. Grinning, Maria said that she would do everything herself. The protagonist closed his eyes and said, well, it's better for him. Well, he had a thought, what a bummer. A plant appeared. It was said that there are 2 ways to use mandrake. One of them is the traditional way of using the root. The girl was sitting near the cauldron. The thought came that the second way with maximum efficiency is to make a decoction. You need to add 28 ingredients, including reed root, actinidia polygamum, goji berry root, deer antlers. You will have to cook all this for more than 10 hours. The drink was poured into the bowl. The thought came that if you do everything like this, the mandrake decoction will be ready. They will ask if it is strange. No, because it is a Korean game. Maria closed her eyes and said that it is ready. All that remains is to wait, and then asked what he is doing, to which the hero replied that he was bored of waiting. The girl asked with wide eyes that these were runes. Yes, to which the protagonist said yes, and she added that she did not understand the meaning, but she had seen them in a culture lesson. Chuck looked down, hearing that where did he learn this? Now runes are like a dead language, to which he replied that his teacher taught him. The girl held a weapon in her hands. It was said that only a year ago he studied runes and spearmanship under her guidance. She left behind unhidden runes and primordial ones. He had mastered the approach to the first, but the second were slightly different. A glow appeared around the man. The thought arose that because they could not be used, just knowing the spelling, the primordial rune after passing it to another person is carved on his body. This is a power that only one person can use. The monster thrust the weapon into the girl. The thought arose that one of the goals of the final boss in the game is to get this primordial rune. The teacher tried to pass it on to him, but died earlier. The monster's eyes lit up. Lowering her head, Maria asked what kind of person his teacher was. Since he knew so much about runes, he must have worked in the magic tower before, to which the hero replied that she was just an ordinary person. The girl stood still. The thought appeared that a person who did everything in his power. Lowering her gaze, Maria said that it seemed that she was a dear person to him. Smirking, the girl asked what kind of potatoes there would be, to which the protagonist replied that he had not had lunch, and she added that she had taken some with her. Archie held the basket in his teeth, to which the hero asked that so it was he, Archie. Raising his gaze, the protagonist said that he saw that she had tamed him well, to which the girl replied that it was all thanks to him. After all, he had already shared blood several times. Thanks to him, he now officially served her. The pet stuck out his tongue. It was heard that even though he didn't speak, it seemed that the more she looked at him, the cuter he was. Chuck grinned and asked that if he was created with blood, then more than half of this friend's body was his blood, then wasn't he his father? To which Maria replied that she hadn't thought about it. Standing behind the hero, the girl asked that she didn't want to play with him. The pet smiled. It was heard that he wanted to play. He wasn't even a real dog. They started playing. It was said that the 1-year-old puppy of the vampire breed was very active, and he had to bring himself to the limit. The food was boiling in a cauldron. It was heard that it turned out well. Looking at Maria, Emma asked why the gentleman was so exhausted, to which Maria replied that he was playing with Archie. A notification appeared. He drank a mandrake decoction. Looking at the message, the hero said that now he also has decent characteristics. Looking away, the protagonist said that they should also drink a cup. In any case, if he drinks it repeatedly, there will still be no effect, to which the girl asked if it was possible. The thought arose that since mandrake is a powerful plant, the effect from it can only be achieved once. The rest will be prepared for Kate and Lewis. The plant appeared. It was said that now only the silver mandrake remained. Chuck gritted his teeth, and thought that this guy needs to be chewed up by the roots. A notification appeared that he consumed the silver mandrake. An aura core was created. The hero smiled and thought that the aura core is the storage of the knight's aura. He already has a core, although to get at least one, the aura must be at its peak. In addition, if his aura